Okay, great. I don't know. Sometimes someone actually has to look at it and it's appreciated. Okay. Wait, are we ready? We are good to go.
And Judge, I just received a text from Judge Maderi that she's in the waiting room.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's begin the meeting. Megan, would you please call the roll?
Yes. The Honorable Sharon Keller.
Here.
Mr. Alec Bunnan.
Here.
The Honorable Valerie Covey. The Honorable Brandon Creighton. The Honorable Richard Evans.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalo Rios.
Here.
The Honorable Nathan Heck. The Honorable Missy Maderi.
Here.
The Honorable Nicole Collier. The Honorable Reggie Smith. The Honorable Sherry Raddick. The Honorable Vivian Torres. Here. The Honorable Judge Whitmire. Judge, we have quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the August 19th and October 26th, 2022 meetings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. I believe that my report is next. I'm going to defer mine till later in the meeting. Jeff, would you like to go ahead, please?
Sure. Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I've been sick for the past few days and I didn't want to get any of you all sick, so I'm calling in from home. I'm still a little hoarse, so if you need me to repeat anything, please don't hesitate to ask me to do that. And again, I apologize for not being there in person. First, on Operation Lone Star, misdemeanor cases have been steady, while felony cases have been on the rise. We continue to use a mix of public defenders and private attorneys to provide counsel in Operation Lone Star cases. Recruiting is still a little bit of a challenge, though LPDO did a big recruiting push over the summer for misdemeanor attorneys that was pretty successful. And given the rise in felonies, they're planning to do the same with felony cases and trying to recruit more felony attorneys in the coming months. The legislature has included Operation Lone Star funding in our base budget for next biennium. So there's no need for us to do too much in the legislature right now regarding that funding. And then finally, just a reminder that Lubbock Private Defender Office, which is serving as our indigent defense hub for Operation Lone Star, they're planning to spin off their Operation Lone Star function into a new organization. The reason for that is the number of cases and the number of staff involved in their Operation Lone Star division is starting to dwarf everything they're doing in Lubbock. Operation Lone Star is getting a little bit bigger. So that's not happening just yet, but I just want to make sure it's on everyone's radar that at some point down the line, we may be talking about funding this kind of LPDO offshoot organization as opposed to funding LPDO itself directly. That's it for Operation Lone Star. Unless there are any questions, I can move on to the legislature. Okay, moving on to the legislature. As a reminder, we requested $25 million a year in funding from the legislature, an additional $25 million a year in funding. And that request was focused on funding rural areas, specifically building rural regional public defender offices. I've been meeting with senators and representatives, and I'm happy to say that we've seen a lot of support, especially in the House, with regard to that request. However, several urban representatives, both Democrats and Republicans, have said that TIDC should ask for additional funding for a few different reasons. One, because they recognize that the need is great. Two, they've suggested that it's a good session to ask for additional funding. And three, they've said that while they support rural investment, they wanted some sort of investment in urban areas as well. The added thing that's happening on the staff side at TIDC that we want to let you know about is that Edwin and I have been talking to Jennifer Henry, who's the CFO at Office of Core Administration. And as we dig into our budget and we look at the revenues coming in, we're anticipating some additional revenue shortfalls into next biennium from GRD funds. We don't know exactly how much that's going to be, but our best guess, and Edwin, feel free to chime in, is roughly another $5 million a year loss. Now, that's not as significant as we saw during the COVID years, but it is still as significant and maybe another indicator that we should ask for additional funding to help make up for that. The staff proposal, and there's not anything magic about this number. I just want to be clear that it's up to the board. But the staff proposal is that we ask for an additional $10 million a year for urban areas. Again, nothing magic about that number, but we think it could be a sweet spot for a few different reasons. One, that's more than enough to offset any revenue loss that we might see. Two, it represents, even though the need in rural areas is a little bit greater, it does represent a significant investment in urban areas. And finally, we think that around that amount, I think that there's an appetite in the urban areas, if we invested that much, that they'd be willing to match that sort of investment. So again, nothing magic about that number, but $10 million is something we were proposing for additional funding requests for the LAR. Edwin, let me pause a minute and just see if there's anything that you wanted to add to that.
No, Jeff, I think that really captures it. The one thing I would add is that in recent sessions, the legislature has appropriated some additional funds that have required us to draw down some of our unappropriated fund balance, or cushion, if you will. And that cushion has been depleted. So that's part of the story for why we need some additional revenues in order to stay even level, in addition to building on our program.
I have a question. If we adopt this motion, I'm thinking about saying up to 20 million. So to give us some flexibility, do you think that's worth doing?
I think that motion would certainly be in order and would provide us with additional flexibility as we continue to talk with the legislature. I defer to Jeff on that question.
Right. As we hear more from people in the legislature, we might want to be able to adjust it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I'm going to add up to $20 million to the proposed motion. And is there a motion to amend the TIDC legislative appropriation request to request an additional exception item of up to $20 million in general revenue to be targeted to improvements to indigent defense systems in urban counties?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Okay,
My information says 20 million, but Jeff, you talked about 10 million, right? Is that, well, you want to do up to 20. So my question is, I guess maybe I've been asleep or something, but when we do our budget, do we ask allocated funds for urban versus rural? Is this something that we've done in the past? I don't recall that being the case.
Yeah, a couple different points on that. I think one, Judge, I'm glad you're asking this because I think there's some clarity that's needed. That, you know, we deal with biennial budgets, and sometimes it's confusing to talk about the annual versus the biennial. I think the staff proposal was 10 million a year, so it'd be good to so basically 20 million additional over the biennium. So it'd be good to probably clarify that in the motion, just so everybody knows what's going on. And the other piece to this, no, I mean, that's a really good question. That no, we don't normally ask for specific money for urban versus rural. I will say there are a couple different reasons that it comes up that way, though. One is just how are we messaging this and talking about this in the legislature? So far a lot of the talk has been around investing in rural areas because that's really where the greatest need is. And then, of course, we got this feedback from the urban representatives that they support that, but they do want some additional urban investment. So I don't think that we necessarily have to frame the request, the amendment, in terms of urban versus rural. And in fact, I think it'd be good to maintain some flexibility for the board to be able to move those dollars around where the greatest need is. The last thing I'd point out on that, though, is that certainly the legislature could do what it wanted and could add a rider saying that they want this money going to urban areas and this pot of money going to rural areas. Generally, they've not done that. We do have a couple riders, including one that requires the TIDC invest money in mental health funds. But generally, that's, of course, the fewer the riders, generally more flexibility for this board.
Yeah, I would like to not necessarily designate. Now, this budget amount, does this include the formula grants and the other grants that we do? This is everything.
That's right. And all of this request is additional funding over our base budget, which is about 47 million a year right now.
Okay, so do we have a number? How much do we spend? Have we spent? Are we spending on urban versus rural? Because I can't imagine that rural would spend more than urban. We've given, since I've been on this board, we give millions and millions and millions of dollars a year to urban communities.
Yep.
I think
I'm just kind of surprised.
I think Edward's wanting to answer.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I just, to your question, Judge Torres, our original LAR request exceptional item was focused on investments in rural communities and indigent defense. So what Jeff is bringing to you all today is asking for some additional that would be earmarked for urbans on top of our big ask for the rurals. So the LAR that was submitted and the original exceptional item that was put in was focused on rural, and this is asking for actually a smaller piece than our ask for rurals that would be earmarked for urbans. But I think that's just clarification. I think there's a consensus here that whatever we approve today would not insist that it be for rural or urban, but just a general amount. Jeff, does that sound right to you?
That sounds right. Now, I would just add that Judge Torres, going back to your question, as a percentage, we actually fund rural areas much higher the way the formula grant works out, and especially with rural regional public defender offices. Is an absolute dollar amount? How much do we invest in rural versus urban? I don't have off the top of my head, but I can get that information for you.
I have a question, Edwin. If the legislature were to approve our request as it is, they probably wouldn't, but certainly wouldn't necessarily tie that money to rural spending, right? It would just be, here's your money.
Historically, that's the case, but in recent sessions, the legislature has used riders to earmark funds for specific purposes more than they have in the past.
Okay.
So it's hard to know for sure, but I think the way that the request was put in, the context was the need in rural Texas for improved infrastructure and indigent defense. That doesn't mean that they would put a rider on us, but they might.
Do you think we should allow ourselves more flexibility in this motion then?
I mean, my sense is that it's good for the motion to provide the flexibility for the funds to be used as the board sees fit and to weigh the various needs throughout the state. So I think, my sense would be that it would be fine to and helpful to adopt a motion that wasn't specific. But I think that I'm not sure if that captures the feedback that Jeff had received.
Well, we won't have all of the feedback right away. And I think I agree with Judge Torres that it would be better. I don't know how to do this. Do I amend my motion? Do I withdraw my motion and start over?
I would defer to Wesley on the mechanics here.
Wait a minute, I didn't do that. Who, you, Bob, you. it's your
Alex
motion.
made the motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you moved it.
But you articulated it.
Okay, I read it, you moved it. So we have a pending motion that has been seconded. Would you call for a vote? Yes.
Wesley, do you want to provide some
I think
parliamentary guidance?
I'm not a parliamentarian, but Mr. Bunning could withdraw his motion, I think, at this point, if you wanted to make a different motion.
Can we just offer an amendment?
Yeah, he can amend his motion.
I'll let you voice it and I'll adopt you.
Okay, I don't know the procedure, but is there a motion to amend the motion to take out the language to be targeted to improvements to indigent defense systems in urban counties?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And one thing to add, that probably the soonest we could amend is likely going to be in January after the introduced bill comes out. So I'll certainly keep the board posted on that and what happens. List two updates they have in the director's report. One, we have 2 additional staff coming on board. We're really excited. We have our first research director, Dr. Sarah Gamble, starting with TIDC in January. And second, we have a grant specialist, starting with Edwin's team, because as you all know, the amount of funding, the complexity of the grants, the number of grants has risen over the past few years. So we're excited to bolster Edwin's staff. After we've hired those two people, we'll be fully staffed. And if you include Operation Lone Star staff, we'll be at 18 staff total for TIDC. So we're pretty excited about that. The last update I have, you may remember, gosh, I think this is going back a year and a half ago. TIDC received some technical assistance from National Center for State Courts, National Association for Criminal Defense Lawyers, Research Triangle International, and APA, which I always forget what it stands for, but I think it's the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. And they were going to look at investigator usage for Texas indigent defense. There's a link in your materials to the preliminary report. We're hoping to have some of the researchers come and visit with this board at our March meeting, and they will have a final report before then, but wanted to make sure you had a chance to read the preliminary report. So if you had any questions by the time the March board meeting rolls around, that you've had a chance to look over everything. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions for me. And again, I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm sorry for the hoarseness of my voice. I hope you can understand everything.
Yeah, it sounds fine. Any questions? Okay,
Sure.
yes.
Can you, just for the record, might want to acknowledge Chair Collier and
Yes.
Chief Justice Raddick have joined.
Chair Collier and Chief Justice Raddick have joined the meeting. And that means that I put up my report, but I will get to it right now out of order. And I only have one topic, and that is about Chief Justice Raddick. Our friend and colleague, Sherry Raddick, is retiring at the end of the year. So we decided that this would be a good time to acknowledge her tenure on the task force for indigent defense and the Indigent Defense Commission. And I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about what she has contributed to this organization.
I hate for you to spend all that time.
It'll be
That's
years,
color.
Lord.
Can I object?
You can object, but it's going to be overruled. Chief Justice Raddick joined this organization when it was still the Task Force on Indigent Defense. I think it was in 2010. One of the first things we did then was to hold a strategic planning meeting at Fort Davis. And we had a practice back then of holding a strategic planning meeting every couple of years, and we would do it at distant places. The first was at Big Bend, so that there wouldn't be interruptions from phone calls or any kind of intrusion on our ability to get together, make friends, bond, and talk about the future of the organization. So we did some serious thinking there. We also had a really good time. But back then, it was really wonderful to be part of this new organization because we're still somewhat in our formative years. And I guess in some ways we still are. But Judge Raddick immediately began to take her responsibilities seriously and dedicated herself to this organization. And she has ever since. And as you know, some members don't really do that. Some never come to the meetings. We don't have much input from them or any. But ever since she joined, she has taken this new job seriously and been very thoughtful about our goals and about everything we do. So at that meeting, we got plenty done, including, I think that was when we changed the name. We had a little contest to pick a new name, and Wesley won, and that's why we are the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. But those of us who were involved back then really did chart the future of the organization in ways that don't happen as easily with an older organization. And Chief Justice Raddick was instrumental in making those decisions. She has always been committed to this group and essential to helping how we work out how we're going to go forward. And as someone who has been here for some of the formative years, she's been especially conscious of our goals, our primary goals. And one of them is to make sure to recognize that we're imposing burdens on counties and that we should always be aware of lightening those burdens when we can. And I think that's one of the reasons we've been a successful organization. So I appreciate all her work on that. And I really hate to think about not having the benefit of her historical knowledge and her thoughtfulness and friendship. Well, we'll still be friends as we go forward, but I will really miss her, and we all will. So as a small token of our gratitude, we have a flag to present to her, which we will send you. And we made a photo book. And here we are at Bastrop State Park in 2012. And people have been finding it on the front, and we will continue to find it throughout this meeting. I'll pass it around. And hopefully this will help you remember us fondly. Chief Justice Raddick, thank you for your service to the Indigent Defense Commission. We're going to miss you when you're gone.
Thank you. So basically, I was really drinking water out of a fire hose most of my formative years. But all these people put their hands underneath my arm and dragged me forward. And so that's how I got through this. And I asked too many questions, of course. But all of you are just the most special that can be. So we carry on.
Well, it's been great doing it with you, and we are really
By the
appreciative.
way, Sharon, you're not getting rid of me so easily.
No, I know, but we just decided it's a good time to mark your service. Okay, I'm going to pass this book around for anybody who hasn't signed it. And we can continue with grants and reporting. Judge Madera.
Thank you very much, Judge Keller. And I will echo that with Chief Justice Raddick. You've been an inspiration to me. And, you know, when I get on this board, I don't think I spoke to you for the first 3 meetings because you scared me. But you are wonderful, and I really appreciate serving.
You'll
on this.
have to explain that sometime.
I was
So I
just
can change my opinion, change my behavior for the future.
Oh no, it's nothing that you did. It was just, I remember sitting in that room and, you know, having imposter syndrome where I'm like, why am I in this room with all these important people?
Oh,
So anyway, so on to grants and reporting. Edwin, are you taking over for me now?
Sure, I'm happy to, Judge Materi. Thank you. I'll direct you all at first to page 10 of your meeting materials for just a high-level preliminary update on the recent indigent defense expenditure reports that were submitted to the TIDC.
Edwin, I'm sorry. Let me jump in real quick, Edwin.
Sure.
Before you go, I'm actually in the middle of a docket call. I have a homicide trial next week. So if I get a text message and you see me not here, just keep carrying on, okay?
Very good. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
So on page 10, you'll see that the total statewide staffing that's been reported by the county so far was at 338 million. Again, these are preliminary figures because we are still in the process of our desk review of the indigent defense expenditure reports. We give each one a high-level review for completeness and trying to identify any issues. We anticipate, based on some missing items, that the final total will land somewhere between 342 to 345 million for the year. So that's a notable increase over the previous year, which was at just under 300 million. And definitely shows that the courts have been roaring back to normalcy after the COVID dip. A couple of years ago, we saw the spending dip down to 275 million. Last year was about 300. Now we're up to 345. I think when we average out these figures over the COVID kind of disruptions, we see a continued trend of costs gradually increasing for indigent defense. We think that some of that is due to the fact that our agency is helping to identify gaps and that we're getting better representation out there. And of course, there are also structural things. Inflation obviously factors into this, but it is quite a jump from last year. And we'll have a formal analysis of the final numbers for you at the March meeting. Any questions on that before we move forward? Next, Crystal is going to give us a similar update on the CPS numbers.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see y'all. So on page 11 is the information for the CPS IDER. Again, this is very preliminary. The numbers I do expect to change perhaps significantly. Right now, when I just run a quick data report, we've got 49 million, some change coming in as reported. This is less than last year. Last year, we had about 65 million that when all was said and done is what we had reported. This year is different from last year. So last year we asked for just summary totals from all of the counties for expenditures and appointments. This year we're asking that counties break down their expenditures and appointments into different categories. And those are custodial parent, non-custodial parent, child, children appeal, adult appeal, and non-parent conservator. And some counties have had a little bit of a struggle getting the information into those categories, which is expected. This is only year 2, and we did anticipate a learning curve. So I think the new categories has something to do with these low numbers. Some counties have not yet reported because they've been having a little trouble getting their numbers in. Travis County, which is a big spender, is one of them that I've been working with. So I do expect this number to go up. It will probably go up in the future. At the next meeting, we'll see different numbers. I also have not gone into every county's report. I did that last year. I will do this again, manually go into every report, read the narratives. So that will affect the numbers as well. And then we also don't have information for how many children were in custody last year for DFPS. We still only have fiscal year 21 numbers. And I've just kind of heard through the grapevine that filings were down this past year. So we'll see how that affects things as well. When we look at the basic breakdown of expenditures, the majority of the money is going to assigned counselor fees, just as happened last year. So that's all for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes.
I have some, no, ma'am, thank you. Okay, so the data that you're collecting is required by statute?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the purpose of collecting the data that
Well,
you understand for?
so the initial purpose, I think, was because we had no understanding of what was happening with child protection cases.
Mhm.
Last year was our very first year collecting the data, and this was pursuant to SB 560, which was from, I think, the 86th legislature. And there was no understanding of how much was being spent, what the needs were, what's even happening locally. So that's the intention of getting the data. We collect financial data every year. It's very similar to the criminal data collection.
Well, let me just get to the point. So if you're there to collect data and it's for dollars that the commission distributes, correct?
We don't
You don't
distribute any
distribute
money.
All
Okay.
county,
So-
all county.
It's all
finance.
county. This commission doesn't give any
Not a
money for the
penny.
indigent
Not
defense?
a penny.
No.
Just
not for
criminals or
Not for,
statutory.
not
money.
for family law.
Really?
Oh, no.
Not $1?
Mm-mm.
It's
The
all
state
local
gives
but-
no
level,
dollars. Yeah.
all
But they
local
get money,
level
but-
tax money.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is, isn't it helpful to have this information so that way when the county is making their, or whenever there's an appropriation request, that they know how much they're spending it on, so that way they know how much to ask for?
The counties know what they spend because it's in their budget every year.
Okay, but they just don't want to give us it, or they
No,
have
they
trouble?
do. They would love some help.
No, but I'm talking about the data. I mean, this
Yeah.
helps justify.
Yeah, they don't collect it probably in the way that we are collecting it, but that, for them, that is a budget. That is a line item in their budget.
And what do you do with the data?
So last year, when we collected it, we created a big report. The Texas Judicial Council approved it at their last meeting in September. That's now available online. And the council actually, through that data, determined that there was a need for some legislation for TIDC to take on the work similar to how TIDC works for criminal cases. And essentially create a division to do much of the work that we do for criminal, hopefully get some money out to the counties, start some, monitoring and that sort of thing, create those functions. So we don't have any of that right now.
Okay, so maybe this is help laying that groundwork,
Mhm.
so that way you can have an understanding of what we would be required to fulfill our duties
Exactly.
and the capacity.
Right.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's what so we're just collecting data right now to gain a better understanding. That's what I wanted to know. It's like, why would I have this and I do nothing to help them with it?
Yeah.
Or
Right,
do anything
and
to address it?
ultimately, I think that from the county's perspective, they're looking to see if the state will help with some of those expenses, which would also yield probably better results for
Mhm.
representation,
Right,
kind of like the indigent defense deal. Once we started giving them some money or helping them with that, I think you saw an improvement in
Okay.
representation. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of been my thinking all
Right.
along.
okay.
We're laying the groundwork to probably try to get some money for them.
And is there anything in this upcoming session that somebody's made a request to help them with this, or?
Yes. Oh, do you want me to, or Jeff, you want to take that?
Yeah,
or me?
Sure, no, I can talk about that. So we have, as Crystal indicated, there's been a proposal from the Texas Judicial Council that would include basically housing some CPS operations at TIDC, including funding the counties. And Chair, I think what you and Judge Torres were saying is exactly right, that this data collection last year really was foundational for that kind of request. We have met with Senator Colcourt's staff. There's not a bill that's been filed yet, but there is talk about drafting a bill, and we'll certainly keep the board apprised of that. But if things were successful, I think there's a chance that TIDC would have staff devoted to CPS data collection and monitoring, and also, I think importantly for the counties, funding. The funding, I think it's important to point out, one of the neat things is it's not just state funding, although that's really important. What we learned through this data collection is that there's a lot of federal funding out there that counties aren't really taking advantage of, and CPS or TIDC might be able to help with that as well.
So if there's a potential bill, is there an appropriation request that's, on standby in case you do get this task with no money? I mean, literally, it would be unfortunate that would happen, but.
Yes.
Yeah, the bill would include a fiscal note that would include funding for this. And I don't know, again, since nothing's been filed, I can't really say exactly what the amount would be. We can't include that in our LAR right now because it's outside of our statutory mandate, but also because it's a new kind of stream of funding. There are all kinds of reasons we couldn't really do it in the LAR, but there would be a fiscal note attached to whatever bill would be filed in the House and the Senate in order to help funding.
Okay, well, good work then, because this is really helpful. Even if you do get, if you do get the appropriation of the bill, you understand what you're getting into. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Crystal,
I think,
where are we?
if not, we can move on to the budget reports, beginning on page 12.
Good morning, everyone. On page 12, you have this sheet that shows our fund balance and grant obligations that we still have remaining for FY21 and FY22. Like I said, this is just a summary of those. And if you turn over to page 13, 13 is our comparison of revenue flow. And as you can see, we're into now FY23, and so of course we have FY22 and 21. And if you kind of go to the middle little table there that says September through November, as you can see, and it shows for 21, 22, and 23, our main three revenue sources. And as you can see for 23, it looks like we're getting back on track to where we were before pre-COVID. So that looks very good. And we're hoping that continues to increase. And if you look over to the left, down the bottom, we also have juror pay. And this is where you see for 21 and for 22, this is where you see we have our, it hasn't been coming in. So we're supposed to have gotten at least 384,000 in 21, and we still have not received that, nor have we received the money for FY22. So, and as you can see, usually close to 6 million a year. So, we're gonna feel that a little bit.
And the just for background, the way that the juror pay fee funds come to TIDC is annually through a different process than the other court cost collections or other sources of revenue. So we've, as Sharon mentioned, we're accustomed to getting about 6 million annually from that source, and that plummeted during COVID, and we haven't been seeing it recover as of yet. We're trying to get more clarification from the comptroller on this. Still haven't.
Is that the jury fee that's paid in?
Yes, the
court
jury
costs?
service fee that's paid as part of court costs, but the way it comes to us through a different mechanism where if the jury service fund has funds in excess of, I believe, $10 million at the end of the year, the excess balance comes to TIDC in the transfer. So a lot of the variables have to do with the number of cases that are disposed where that fee is collected, and of course the number of jury trials that get impaneled. So there are a lot of variables that COVID had a big impact on, but we're hoping that that's going to recover. We're just not seeing it yet, and we need to get some clarification from the comptroller.
All right. Point of clarification. Wait a minute, you know how much it is in the, like, this money's already been collected from the juror fee?
So the amount for FY21, which is about 384,000, that is the TIDC portion that would be in excess of the 10 million.
Where's that at now?
We have not received it, and we have not gotten any answers.
Right, they said they were gonna send it to us, but we have not received.
So does the comptroller have it? Like it's in a pot somewhere?
We
Should.
presume so.
It should
Yeah.
be.
And so Did you call the?
Yes. We've had difficulty getting clarification on both the stat. We would like to get periodic updates on the status of the jury service fund so that we can plan throughout the year how much we're likely to receive, but we haven't been getting any clarification.
When do you normally get this money?
Usually maybe about between, latest will be November, September, November, because what they do is they pay out everything. They get the money comes in, they pay out everything. Like I said, and then anything over that's left over 10 million, we get.
And so they know that the 384,000 is the leftover.
But that's what they said at the time. This was in 21.
So the check's in the mail?
We share your frustration, Chair Cox.
But you use this for your administrative staff and everything?
Well, it's, yes, for grants, for all of our operations, in the big scheme of things, I mean, we had been accustomed to receiving 6 million, that plummeted to 300 some thousand, so once we were aware that we were taking that kind of a hit, the 300,000 in the big scheme of things has not impacted our operations yet. It's relatively small, but the overall decline in this revenue source has been very significant.
So fiscal year 22 is already ended.
Yes, and
Yes.
we don't have any indication of what we should be expecting for 22 yet.
Okay,
And
I'll look at
normally
that.
we would have the money by now.
Yes,
For both?
For both.
yes.
Okay, I'll make a call.
Appreciate
Yeah,
any
Chair.
information.
Thank you.
Chair Collier, yeah, to your point, we have called, we have emailed, we've reached out to our normal contacts at the comptroller's office, and we've not had much luck yet. We've also worked with Jennifer Henry, the CFO of the Office of Court Administration, and had her do some outreach and to no avail. So I think any outreach you might be willing to do, I think the next step that Edwin and I were talking about is a certified letter because it's getting, it's been months and months of this at this point.
Right, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Page 13, Chair.
Okay, there was on the page 14. This is our fiscal year FY 23 budget. And so at the top, of course, you see our budget, and then you see what revenues we have. The far right column, you see what revenues we have received in so far. And then at the bottom are our expenditures. And as you can see, we've only had administrative expenditures except for the OLS grants. Our grants for FY 23, that payments will start going out February. So we'll start getting those grants out. So that just shows you how much we've collected so far, how much we have expended. Any questions? Thank you.
So on page 15, Doriana will address some formula grant items.
Thank you, Edwin. So at the August commission meeting, the board adopted the FY 23 formula grant request for application with no changes to the formula and budgeted 20.5 million for the program. As a reminder, the formula grants awards are based on a combination of population and reported contingent defense expenditures. And award amounts will be determined upon completion of the desk reviews of the FY 22 IDER. Excuse me, because the board has budgeted the same amount for FY 23 as we did for FY 22, we're estimating the awards to be roughly similar to last fiscal year. And if there aren't any questions, we have motion number 3.
Is there a motion to award 20.5 million in FY 2023 formula grants to counties according to the policy published in the FY 2023 formula grant RFA?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Keller, once again, I never know if I'm supposed to read these or you are, so I'm not trying to usurp you in any way.
I understand, and I'm usually stepping on your toes, but I think you're doing it right.
I was just happy that I found the right award.
Thank you, Judge Maderi. Doriana, you want to cover page 16?
Sure, thank you. On page 16, we have the report on special conditions for our formula grants. When our formula grants are awarded, the special conditions are placed on awards for counties that are not in compliance with plan, reporting, and grant requirements. We still have a couple of leftover special conditions from our FY 22 formula grants. We actually got the formula grant resolution for our one county yesterday. So all we have for FY 22 are 13 counties that have not submitted their reports to the Texas Judicial Council.
And TIDC staff and OCA staff have been in contact with all of our outstanding FY22 special conditions. And the status of special conditions on our FY23 formula grants as of this morning, 3 counties have not submitted their IDER and 5 are currently in progress. 21 counties have outstanding resolutions. 10 counties have plans that do not comply with TIDC plan requirements. And 59 counties have not submitted their report. Again, staff has been in contact with all of our outstanding counties.
Thank you, Doriana. And actually, those figures, we always have some stragglers on these requirements for formula funding. This is not as bad as it had been in previous years, and we're optimistic that we can get these all addressed. And we're, as Doriana said, we're following up. Next item on page 17, we have a new grant request for an indigent defense coordinator grant for Grayson County. The county is seeking a new grant. They have not received an improvement grant before, and they have identified a need for an indigent defense coordinator to manage the front end processes of qualifying defendants and ensuring timely appointment of counsel. Staff has reviewed this and agrees that this would be a helpful addition to the Grayson County system, and we have a motion to recommend a new improvement grant of $64,000 for an indigent defense coordinator for Grayson County. That's motion number 4.
Is there a motion to award Grayson County a new FY23 improvement grant of up to $64,000 for an indigent defense coordinator?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have to take discussion on it, or can I call for a vote? Any discussion?
Yeah.
Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, Edwin.
Thank you, Judge. Next item is on page 22. And this is a grant modification request from B County. And what this request is doing is restructuring the way that the grants are provided for the TRLA operated regional public defender. That, as you'll recall, covers a number of counties. So back in 2009, we created the B County Regional Public Defender Office with 3 counties. It was 1 judicial district, and those counties contracted with TRLA to operate their regional public defender program. When TIDC adopted the sustainability grant system, Willacy County was brought in, that had previously created a public defender with TRALA, was brought in under the umbrella of the B County grant to be able to avail themselves of the sustainability grant program. Since then, TIDC has been moving toward providing grants directly to the individual counties that have joined these regional TRALA programs to simplify the contracting processes. And at the request of B County, they have asked us to separate out Refugio and Willacy County funding from their grant and issue separate grants. Those 2 counties are in separate judicial districts. It makes a lot of sense in terms of monitoring those distinct operations and contracting for those distinct operations to have separate grant awards. At the staff level, we don't anticipate any additional administrative problems with this. In fact, we think it will simplify things. And also, we believe that it will result in the counties having more direct communication with TRLA and monitoring the budgets and simplifying the contracts. So in order to accomplish the request from these counties, everybody's in agreement in terms of the stakeholders from the various counties. We have 3 recommendations at the bottom of page 22. The first would be to approve B County's request to separate out the Willacy and Refugio components, and that would result in a modified award. And this would be all effective January 1st. So the first quarter would be operating under the existing system. That would reduce the B County award to $963,192. Second component would be to award a new sustainability grant to Willacy County directly for their component, which is $188,957. And third, to award a new FY23 sustainability grant to Refugio County for $75,000 effective January 1st. We do have a motion on page, motion number 5 that would implement those 3 recommendations. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this. So is it essentially cost neutral or a little better than cost neutral? There's a few $1,000s in savings because of a request to modify the scope of the Refugio program.
Is there a motion to modify FY23 sustainability grant to B County and award new FY23 sustainability grants to Willacy and Refugio counties according to the recommendations on page 22 of the meeting notebook? I guess, is there a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. This is a regional public defender's office that Trala
So
actually provides the defense work for
Trala provides the defense for all of these
all of these counties.
Yes.
So you had them as a regional public defender's office with Trala contracting with each county individually.
So currently TRLA provides a grant to B County, and then B County has interlocals
Okay,
with Willacy and Refugio, as well as the two other counties in its judicial district. They've asked us to just kind of separate out the funding administratively.
yeah, just the money.
Right,
Okay,
right. And I
that sounds like a good idea.
yeah, I think it will simplify things for the
Yeah.
counties. Any
All
other
in
questions?
favor? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again. Aye again.
Thank you all. I think that was unanimous. Next item is related on page 23. So you'll recall that back in June, the TIDC approved a number of pandemic backlog reduction grants with the ARPA federal funding that we had been provided. One of those was for B County, and it was specifically premised on the backlog needs in Refugio County. Because we're separating this funding for Refugio out from under the B County umbrella, what's proposed here and requested by the counties is to terminate the award to B County and just provide it directly to Refugio, since it was specific to the needs in Refugio County. So we have motion number 6 to implement those two recommendations at the bottom of page 23.
Is there a motion to terminate the 2-year B County pandemic backlog reduction grant to B County of $401,880?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
And then
You want me to keep going on, Edward, and call for a vote?
I think you can call for a vote, Judge.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then the second piece of that is motion number 7, Judge Maderi.
Motion to award a new 2-year pandemic backlog reduction grant of $401,880 to Refugio County.
So
Any-
moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Judge. Next item is page 24. We have a grant modification request from Hidalgo County for their public defender mental health unit. This was a grant award that was approved by the board at the June 22 meeting. 2-year grant for adding the mental health unit to the existing Hidalgo County Public Defender Office. It's a small team of an attorney dedicated to that caseload and a mental health caseworker. The county has experienced a lot of difficulty recruiting for the program and has recently lost a number of staff members in the public defender office generally due to salaries not being competitive. So the county has requested to increase the 2-year award by $17,403 or about $8,700 annually to increase the salary and associated benefits budget for the new unit in order to ensure that the salaries are competitive and to ensure success of the program. So we have a motion on number 8, to implement that recommendation.
Judge Keller, will you call for this motion? I'm going to abstain for this. It's Hidalgo County, which is in my 5th region.
Okay. Is there a motion to increase the 2-year mental health? Oh, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So this is a grant that was approved in June,
Yes,
the 369,000.
right. That's a 2-year grant. Yes.
Okay, so they asked for it in June, and since June, here we are in December 1st. Now they're saying that they need more because of the salary.
Right.
And so the $17,000 that for the 2 years, is that going directly towards the salary of one person or two?
Two people,
Uh-huh.
the salary and benefits over 2 years. So there's 2 staff members, and the $8,700 would be basically $4,000 some dollars per, annually. I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. $8,700 annually. The details I think are broken out in some of the subsequent pages. Let's see. I mean, frankly, that when the application was submitted, we knew and believed that the salaries were quite low. But they were in line with, so this would, I think, basically move the attorney salary from about 77,000 to about 85,400. And
It's right here. It says public defender 3,
yes,
77,057 on
Right.
page 27.
right.
And then they have another public defender 3 for 79,000.
I think these are different years because
Okay.
so the first one was for the first year of the grant and the second one, and that factors in the county's policy on COLAs or
Sure.
annual reviews.
So this is not 100% of the cost. Is it just contributing to a portion of it?
So the request that's presented today is a modification of their current grant that would augment it by $8,700 annually.
I'm just trying to figure out, because what if this is not enough?
Oh, I see. I mean, we've been assured that it is because the county public defender has gone to their commissioner's court and worked with their HR to make sure that the county is okay with this salary level. And if it's not, I think, okay, they'll come back to us, but it represents it provides them with the flexibility that they believe they needed.
So they, for 2 people, they want to offer a salary that's $4,000 more each year than what they were offering.
I think it averages out to that. I'm not sure how it breaks down. I think most of it was to increase the attorney salary in particular, as opposed to.
Okay, because I only see one attorney there, so
Yeah,
probably,
I think it was focused on the salary for the attorney because that's where they had more success in hiring as mental health caseworker for the unit. And they were specifically struggling to find attorneys. I know that they had lost some other public defenders in their office based on folks going to law firms that were paying substantially more.
so, but they feel like the 4,000 additional dollars or 8,000, whatever it is, will be sufficient to attract a quality candidate. And they won't need to come back and ask for more for that.
Yes, that was their request and they believed it was sufficient.
Okay,
So
So they're not fully staffed,
I believe that they did hire somebody at a lower level.
so they are fully staffed.
They
They're worried about retention.
Right. So they had a long time. We awarded the grant in June. They posted pretty much immediately at that lower salary level. I think I got a call from the chief defender about just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that they had finally hired. But they are concerned about the ability to retain and just make sure that the salaries are correct.
Yeah, I know
This is,
Go ahead.
no, Judge, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I was just gonna say, I noticed that there are several requests for additional funds for different PDOs. And I'm just wondering, are we tracking the performance of these PDOs? Do we care to look at that before we give them more money? I mean, how many cases does each attorney have? How many cases do they dispose of? Have they disposed of? I just want to know, do we have any performance that we need to look at? Should we not be monitoring that? Just make sure they're not collecting the money and they're not doing anything. I mean, that would concern me a lot.
Yeah, we
Because
do.
that defeats the purpose of what we're doing.
Absolutely, Judge. So we do require quarterly reports that are quite detailed on the number of cases that are appointed to the program, the number that are disposed, how many are pending. So we track that caseload. We look at that data quarterly. In this case, it's a brand new program that's just getting launched. So I think it's an adjustment.
That's 5 months. Are you telling me, do they have cases?
They just hired the staff about a month ago
So they've not handled any cases yet.
because they couldn't hire an attorney. I mean, that we've been seeing a lot of difficulty with public defender offices not being able to identify and recruit staff. This has been a problem for some of the nonprofit public defenders that are working on OLS. It's been a struggle to recruit attorneys for the programs that we've created.
I know, but if we come back, if they say, oh, wait, we should have asked for another 10,000 because now the market is so competitive and we still cannot fulfill that. Are we gonna just say, okay, we understand that you haven't been able to fulfill it? I mean, to me, it seems like everybody could ask for this.
Well, I think the thing to look at is the $85,000 salary for a qualified defender who has experience with mental health work. I mean, we regard that as a reasonable salary level.
But they
And we-
chose to do the public defender.
Yes, I mean, this is their request.
No, I thought you said that it didn't have to be a lawyer to do, it wasn't a public defender job, it was a mental health job.
There are two positions in this unit that's being added to to the existing public defender office in
Oh.
Hidalgo. One of them is an attorney dedicated to representing clients with mental health issues.
Okay,
And then the support staff person is a mental health caseworker.
okay, what are they making?
I don't have that in front of me, but I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60, somewhere in there.
And some of the dollars that they're asking for is gonna go to that position too?
I think that the request was specific, I mean, I'd have to kind of read back through it, but I believe the request was specific to the attorney recruiting challenges and the attorneys.
Okay, I thought I heard you say it was gonna be for two positions, so now it sounds like it's one.
Well,
It is two. I'm looking at page
I
27.
thought it was two as well.
And it's public defender two and public defender.
No, that's a different year, he said.
It is
Yeah.
different years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there are two positions funded under the grant,
Well,
but the supporting information was specific to the attorney salary. So I may have missed it.
the 3.5% cost of living adjustment times 4 equals pretty close to what they're asking for. So it looks like 2 years for 2 employees.
But they only put it one on here.
They did.
Yeah, I think this is not related to COLAs so much as just the way that they initially budgeted was based on the salary structure of the current at the time, the current public defender office salaries. And the chief defender there had explained to me that he lost several staff members who were lured away by.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna find that with most public defender's office, that people come out, they get their experience and then they move on. That's that's what they do.
A lot of them. I just wanna make sure we're doing enough. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
I understand that it's a competitive market, especially being in that area. You gotta get somebody that wants to, live in that area.
Mhm.
And so, I mean,
Well,
we used to say they may not come back. They may have to come back and say, oh, wait, we put it out. We still haven't found anybody. Now we need to pay them more.
Right, so they have recently hired an attorney. They
Okay.
have identified someone, and that attorney, I believe, I'm not sure what was communicated to that person about this test.
Okay.
This request was originally formulated before they had made the hire. And I'm not sure to what extent the new staff person was apprised of this being in the pipeline.
And I would assume if the county vetted this internally, that they didn't pick this out of the air, they have assistant district attorneys. Who
Right.
Right,
salaries that they
Karen.
compare to, so it's,
Well, wouldn't they have done that initially though?
That's what I was thinking. It's June.
Yeah,
well, but some people, some counties think public defenders should get less, so, and they're not required to pay due parity, so
Oh, wow.
I don't know, but I do know of counties where public defenders get less than assistant.
So the county, we had originally targeted this for presentation at our last meeting in August. The county finally approved the request, I think about 3 weeks after the August meeting. So this has been sitting around waiting for action since then. And there have been some developments since they originally formulated this request. They brought somebody on. Again, I don't know to the extent that the new staff person was apprised of this request being in the pipeline, but I do think it goes to their ability to retain qualified staff. And again, I think that, based on everything that we're seeing, the proposed salary level was entirely reasonable for a qualified attorney with special skills. I think in some circumstances, the staff does go back to a grantee or an applicant and say, we don't think you're asking for enough, or we think these numbers are too low. But generally speaking, after they've kind of gone through their county processes and really kind of with some advice and experience figured out what they want to ask for, we generally defer to the local folks in terms of what their needs are upon reflection and based on the challenges they've seen so far.
Sure.
So
My 2 cents is that sounds like a very reasonable request. 85,000.
It is, but I just want to make sure it's enough.
Okay, well, good conversation. Is there a motion to increase the 2-year mental health offender improvement grant to Hidalgo County?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Motion carried.
thank you all.
Can you mark me
Next
down
time.
as abstaining, please?
Thank you, Judge Maderi. Next item is page 29. This is just a no-cost extension of grant term for Travis County. So as you all know, several years ago, we provided a grant to Travis County to both start up the new public defender office and to make some enhancements to their managed assigned counsel program. So in the FY22 budget year for that multi-year grant, there were funds earmarked for a research and evaluation project to evaluate the impact of the program. County has experienced delays in contracting with a qualified researcher in order to get that program, that research and evaluation project launched. Since it was budgeted out of the FY22 year, they're just asking for the ability to extend the grant term for their 22 award through the end of this calendar year for the budget line item for the research and evaluation program. So we obviously believe and want that research and data project to move forward, and there's no additional cost. It's just allowing them a bit of extra time to get that big project working. So that would be happy to answer questions on that, and we do have a motion number 9 on that issue.
There a motion to modify FY22 improvement grant to Travis County to extend the term of the grant through September 30th, 2023 for the research and program evaluation portion of the budget.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. We're getting close to wrapping up our grants section here. Page 30 is our next item. And this one is a request from Taylor County and from Tom Green County. And this is also kind of an administrative shift that's being proposed. So back in June of 2022, the board awarded a 2-year pandemic backlog reduction grant to Taylor County to create the 5-county Big Country Regional Public Defender Program. Now, when the board was evaluating, or I'm sorry, when the staff was evaluating the number of requests that came in for those federal dollars under the ARPA program, we didn't have the requests outstripped the available funds. And so we made some adjustments to a number of the awards in order to try to accommodate as many worthy projects as we could. In the case of Taylor County, we slashed their grant by the biggest amount of any of the awards. We cut it down to 25% of the amount that they had requested for a comprehensive RPDO to basically line up with the available resources. So Taylor County has begun moving forward to implement the program, but they reached out to the neighboring Regional Public Defender Office, the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender Office based in Tom Green. And I should mention that we have the Chief Defender of the Concho Valley Public Defender Office, Joe Stevens, here with us today in case you all have any questions. And both stakeholder groups agreed that the best way forward for Taylor County's region was to partner with the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender Program, which is already in place, has policies and procedures and infrastructure already kind of developed, and to expand the Tom Green County Concho Valley program to cover the Taylor County region. So both the Taylor County stakeholders and the Concho Valley stakeholders agreed that that was a good idea. Taylor County doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and build something from scratch. The staff has been involved with these discussions and believes that it would be an optimal change. So the first requested change would be to restructure the funding already awarded by terminating the grant that was previously approved for Taylor County and making a new award to Tom Green County to provide public defender services in this region as an expansion of their current program. The second proposed change is related to the amount of the award. So we cut this program back, as I said, the most dramatically of any of the pandemic grants to 25% of their request. It is a 5-county region. And in the course of working with the county to decide how to operationalize this smaller budget, it was clear that it was not going to be feasible to provide sufficient coverage to the outlying counties and to Taylor County, which is the home of Abilene. Got that right? Yes, Abilene. I always mix it up with Amarillo for some reason. That's pop. And so they really need additional resources in order to make the regional program viable. We just cut it back too much. So we do have about 1.1 million remaining in the federal ARPA funds appropriated for pandemic backlog reduction that could be dedicated to augmenting the Taylor County Regional Program. And so the requested change number 2 would be to augment the award to an increased total of just over 2.9 million, as detailed in recommendation number 2 at the bottom of the page. And then finally, there's a minor change to the existing grant for the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender Office. There are going to be some staff, the leadership of the office that's going to be allocated between the 2 new programs, but also as a result of that, the existing Concho Valley Public Defender would be losing a little bit of capacity. We don't want them to take a hit to their overall capacity. And so the request would be to augment the existing award for the Concho Valley project by $10,254, basically to maintain capacity. I know that that's a somewhat complicated restructuring and augmentation of an award that was approved earlier in the summer. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Joe Stevens, the Chief Defender, is also happy to answer questions, and I'll leave it there for you all to let me know.
I have a question.
Yes.
Very good. I mean, it does sound complicated, but you made it sound easy, so very well. Question about the remaining pandemic backlog reduction. Just for my humor me, tell me, has anybody else asked for the money, and are we supposed to use it up by December 31st, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we put out a special request for applications, I guess over a year ago now, or I take that back. I think we issued it in January to all counties to allow them to make these requests, and then we got all the requests in. At the June meeting, we reviewed all the requests that came in for these dollars and made a number of awards. I believe we had 11, 12 awards out of that pot of money. But we did hold back some because we were still working with some of the applicants on details, and we wanted to keep some powder dry, if you will, to make any kind of adjustments that might be needed. So in the course of reviewing the implementation plans for these programs, this issue of the viability of the regional program came up, and the staffing challenges of covering outlying rural counties as well as providing services in the larger county, Taylor. The consensus emerged that they needed more money to make it work. And so that's why we're coming forward with this application. In terms of the timeline that you mentioned, the funds are supposed to be spent by the end of 2025. So the counties have basically 2 years to use these up, and we've provided 2-year awards.
Okay.
So ideally, they'll get started by around the beginning of the calendar year, and they'll have a full 2 years. But we are under some time pressure to deploy these resources or go ahead and award these resources so that the counties will have an opportunity to use them.
But I also heard you say something like you only gave them 25% of what they had asked for.
Right.
So they really need this.
Yes, yeah. A number of the requests we pared back a little bit, or somewhat substantially, some of them, by as much as half in some cases. This one was much more dramatically reduced because we were dealing with competing priorities of other worthy programs.
And you just want to make sure that they had worked out the details.
We wanted to make sure that we wanted to give them a good start and put a kind of program in place that they could build on. And I think that we underestimated the demands of having a regional program and the complexities of staffing a regional program with a really kind of small startup operation. We needed to.
So there's no doubt in them being capable of doing it. They can do it. The program, the plan works. They just need to fund it.
That's exactly right. In fact, one of the things that really made everybody enthusiastic about this option of expanding an existing program to cover this region was that this program in Concho Valley, the program based in Tom Green, has been very successful. Mr. Stevens has provided very good leadership. He's done a great job recruiting staff that are talented and qualified, and everyone in the region has been very happy to program. So there's a proven track record of this organization delivering for these counties. And I think that's why the Taylor County stakeholders were enthusiastic about this option, as well as staff.
Thank you.
How
Joe?
long has the Concho been in existence?
Yes, Judge, we've been accepting appointments since June, actually.
June of this year.
Yes.
So still a young program.
Yeah, Yeah, when did they first start up? Like
December the 6th was my first day, actually.
December the 6th, so 6 months to first appointment?
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of, as we talked about, one of the challenges was recruiting, right, Joe?
Well, recruiting and big issue with Tom Green was that the defense part was quite literally dying. So we came in on December the 6th, and I said that we would basically spend the first 6 months putting together the infrastructure for the office so that it would be sustainable and would last. Our metric was not getting into court as quickly as, that wasn't our sort of success metric. Our success metric was how can we get the foundation of this program correct? And we were able to recruit, we were able to get things in place, we were able to work with our stakeholders and get into court within 6 months, and that has been really successful. 13 to 14 lawyers hired, all support staff up and running. We looked at our stakeholders in Tom Green County and we said, if we were going to open a restaurant in San Angelo, it would be open in 6 months. So to open a rural law office that is fully operational, give us at least 6 months to get, and everyone bought in, and those are the expectations that we set from day one, and I think it's borne fruit.
Good. How many cases do y'all have now?
We had within the first 4.5 months, we had about 1,200 cases appointed to us.
Good. How many attorneys?
13 as of Monday for 14 total.
And dispositions?
We had about 200 plus. I will point out that we were being appointed cases at a rate that far exceeded what our grants called for. But that was because some attorneys died. One attorney became a judge, 2 attorneys wound down their practice. I mean, the wheel very often in the outer counties surrounding Tom Green is just us or someone else.
Yeah.
So we're working on those and we're finessing those numbers, but that's what happens in the first 6 months of an operation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move forward?
I do have one question. So Concho Valley PDO will expand to include Taylor County and the surrounding counties?
That's right, Judge. The proposal is for them to open a new office in Taylor County in Abilene that would cover the 5-county region, but that that would be a satellite office of the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender. And I think that in terms of the name, there's the Big Country region, there's the Concho Valley region. We've kicked around Big Concho. I don't know exactly what it will be called, but that's the idea. So this would be somewhat similar to the Hill Country office has an office in Kerr County and an office in Medina County to make sure that they can provide coverage without and minimize travel and expenses. So it will be a somewhat similar structure to that.
But it'd be one grant to Concho Valley or whatever name they decide on.
So what we're proposing here, what the counties are requesting and that we're endorsing is that the Tom Green County grant for the existing program is budgeted separately, and then the expansion is a separate grant. That's the proposed solution for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a separate pot of money. It's this federal money that's funding the expansion to the Big Country region. And so the funding would be separated. It would be one organization administered by Tom Green County. The auditor in Tom Green has been wonderful to work with and very, Nathan Craddock has been wonderful to work with and thinks that this is also the best way to handle the expansion is to kind of segregate the expansion funds from the core operation funds.
But this continues after the Biden bucks expire. After the ARPA funds, is that right?
Yes, that's right. So when the board approved the original grant to Taylor County, they did so, you all did so with the intention of transitioning to sustainability funding moving forward, similar to what's been offered to the other regional public defender offices. So that would continue to be the plan, that the program would qualify for the sustainability grant program after these dollars are expended.
Yeah, and it will be for how many counties now?
So the Concho Valley program currently covers 7, and the Big Country region is 5 additional counties. So you're looking at 12 total.
12 county PDO. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, thanks. I was confused.
You bet. Sorry. I know it's a sort of complicated a reorganization of what you've already done, and I appreciate y'all's patience in letting us lay it out.
I'm glad they mentioned that because it's amazing how much we get to do with all these Biden bucks, all this good work that we're doing.
It's allowed us
Oh, we'll pay
to
for it.
it's allowed us to do some help some more counties move their systems forward. Any other questions, discussion?
Edwin, do you want me to read 2 or number 10? In 2 parts, the termination and then the award, or you want me to just read it as is?
I think you can just read it as is, Judge. We do have a letter on page 31 where Taylor County is declining the award that you've already provided, basically to endorse this new method of financing the project. So I think you could read it as just motion number 10.
All
And
right, do I have a-
I will abstain as I practice in those areas. This is Gonzalo Rios.
Okay.
All right, is there a motion to terminate the pandemic backlog reduction grant to Taylor County and award a new 2-year pandemic backlog reduction grant of $2,906,996 to Tom Green County to fund expansion of the public defender services in Taylor, Jones, Coleman, Callahan, and Shackelford County?
Second.
Any other discussion? You should go there, Wesley, for the day and be like king for the day in Shackelford County. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then the
All right.
related motion is on.
Right. And then 6 or number 11 would be a motion to increase existing FY23 grant to Tom Green County for the Concho Valley Regional Public Defender by $10,254 to a revised award of $1,245,312. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right. Any other discussion on that? All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, Judge.
And Edwin, before you go on, I just want to mention a few things real quick. I wanted to say a word of praise for Edwin and Scott, who
Yes.
worked very, very closely with both the big country counties and Concho Valley. It was a lot of work and they did a great job. I also just wanted to thank this board. When we received that 14 million in ARPA funding, we wanted to make sure we got that funding out the door effectively and responsibly. And with this grant award, I think we've done that actually. I think we've gotten all but a very small amount of that 14 million out the door in both effective and responsible manner. So thank you for working on that with us. Lastly, Judge Maderi, Wesley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Shackelford County was actually named after one of Wesley's ancestors. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Captain Jack Shackelford? Yeah.
Is that right? Wow. All right. Well, let's go have a parade in your honor, Wesley.
Thank you all. I think that these investments that we've made through this program are going to pay dividends over the long run and really transform things in this part of the state. So thank you all for your support on that. The last item in terms of grant modifications is page 42. It's from Galveston County. So in 2021, TIDC awarded Galveston County a grant to create the Mental Health Public Defender Office. And under the improvement grant step down funding schedule, this is 4-year step down grant. The county is paying just over half of the funds. They had a bit of a delayed start initially, and so the FY23 grant is basically funding just under half of the cost. Galveston County has also gone through this competitive review of its program salaries, attorney salaries in particular, and consistency between the prosecutors in Galveston County and the public defender staff. And the program was originally developed, the proposed salary levels for the public defender were based on comparable positions in the Galveston County prosecutor's offices. And so the county has adopted increases in the salaries and associated benefits costs for the public defender and for the prosecutors. The impact for the program would increase, the Galveston County is requesting to increase the 2023 grant award by $17,760, which would increase the overall grant for this year to $382,806. And you see the figures broken down a little bit on their request on page 43. The issue that was driving this one really, I think, was parity with the prosecutor's office locally. Both the prosecutors, actually, I'm not sure where the conversation originated, but there was a move to increase the prosecutor's salaries. And they were looking at comparables and recruiting challenges that we've identified in other programs. And this would essentially keep pace with the approved awards and some semblance of parity between the prosecution and the defense. I will tell you that the county, Galveston County, has already done this. And so I don't think that they're going to undo this if the board does not adjust the award, but they are requesting that we take into account the adjustments that they've made and adjust our award accordingly.
Edward?
Yes.
Did the DA's office already go up in theirs?
Yes, the increases across Galveston County have already been implemented, including in the prosecutor's office.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
You want me- All right, so is there a motion to approve Galveston County's request for a revised FY23 grant award of $382,806?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you all.
You better ask if those are signs.
Opposed?
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I didn't hear you vote.
Thank you all. A couple of other quick items in the grant section before we move on. I appreciate your patience working through these issues and the good discussion we've had. Doriana, do you want to lay out pages 45 and 47?
Sure, thank you, Evelyn.
46.
On page 45, we have the improvement grant request for application for FY24. Each year we issue the improvement grant RFA, and our improvement grants provide program-specific support for improved indigent defense in Texas County. There are no substantive changes from last year's RFA, and the only thing that will be updated were our dates for this fiscal year, and the staff recommendation is to issue the 4 improvement grants pending reformatting and edits for clarity. And if there are no questions, we have motion number 13.
All right, is there a motion to issue the FY 2024 improvement grant RFA pending reformatting and edits and for clarity? Motion number 13.
So moved.
Second.
Right, all in, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes.
You lose somebody.
The audio.
Okay, one more grant item is that has to do with the revision of our Texas Administrative Code grant rules. You'll recall at the August board meeting, the staff provided a draft of updates. Statute requires that agencies periodically update the administrative code every several years. So this is part of that process. So you all reviewed those back in August, made some changes, which were incorporated, and then those were published in the Texas Register for public comment. We did not receive any public comment on the published draft. And so now it is time to adopt the rules. During the dry run with Judge Keller had a few suggested tweaks to the language, which I think are basically clean up and not substantive. And those are highlighted in yellow in the printed meeting book, I assume on the electronic meeting book as well. So on page 46, you have a summary of the proposed amendments, just in general to refresh your memory on what types of things were tweaked. And then a few cleanup adjustments that were proposed since these were published in the Texas Register. One on page 48. Are they all highlighted, Doriana? Yes, and then the others on page 59. Essentially just rewording for clarity and not terribly substantive. Happy to answer any questions, or we do have a motion.
I wanted to point something out.
Please.
When I read what came in the original meeting book, I saw something, a substantive change that I thought made, but wasn't in the meeting book, and that was that the original proposal that we got said the commission or the grants and reporting committee may also authorize withholding improvement grant funds. And I thought, well, we don't want to do that. We've never done that before. It should be a decision committee. And so Edmund changed it, but we sent out the wrong draft. So that is not, in case you read the initial one, that is no longer in there. Now it says the commission may also authorize withholding improvement grant funds. In case anybody was concerned.
Dutch, can I ask just a procedural question of Wesley?
Yeah.
Wesley, with those changes, do we need to republish in the Texas Register then and wait for comments or no?
No, we can make non-substantive changes. So the order would be to adopt the rules as published with these 3 changes. So we will have to cite what the changes are, and the rules as they're finally adopted will be published in the register with those changes, but they don't have to be reproposed for comment if they're non-substantive.
Great, thank you.
So we have motion number 14. Yes, 14 and 15.
Can you
I'm
go ahead
sorry,
and read that,
14,
Edward? Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Motion number 14 is to adopt the proposed repeal and new grant administration rules with the 3 non-substantive amendments included in the meeting book on pages 46 through 60.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah, I can't tell that there is some are, if, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Need to ask any opposed. I'm not sure.
Any opposed? All in favor? Aye.
Well, thank you all. That concludes the grant section of our meeting. And thank you all for your patience and the discussion.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, so Deborah will give an update on the fiscal monitoring report.
Sure. If you'll turn to page 61 in the meeting notebook, you'll find my outline of activities for the fiscal year. And just to summarize what I've done since the August board meeting, I have issued 2 final reports. Those were to Kenny County and Barnes County. I have 6 reports in the vetting process at this time, so hopefully those will be issued soon. And then I still have 2 reports in progress. One is with Wichita County and the other is with Travis County. The IDER report, the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report, is due out on November 1st. So a lot of my time in this last quarter has been focused with us assisting in that process. We've got auditors calling and asking questions, and now spending time doing the desk reviews of the IDRs that have been submitted. So that was a great deal of time as well. And then the last thing that I had was we had 3 comprehensive annual financial reports from counties submitted in their single audits. Those were with Bell, Waller, and Harris County. I took a quick glance at those, and Harris County had their MAP grant that we support picked out as the major program for the single audit for Harris County, and there were no compliance issues noted for that county, and I find that important, so I just wanted to share that with y'all. But that's the end of my report.
And Deborah, you have a grandkid due this week or next, right?
Oh, yeah, I have a child. I mean, it's like any minute I can get a phone call.
Great.
That's exciting.
Number 3.
May I just thank everyone, your work that you did for the reviews. It's very helpful. And even before your reports come out, changes are made that provide improvement to the process. So I want to thank you for all your work that whoever's doing, Deborah, whoever's working on that. on these monitoring and reviews. Because, just, us asking the questions and doing the, investigating, it really helps with the program. So thank you. And with Kenny County especially, changes were made before you even, finalized the report. So thank you.
Edwin, I want to apologize. I'm trying to multitask and I'm in a docket call with someone named Edward. So I called you Edward instead of Edwin. So
It's okay,
So
Judge, it's a common.
yeah, I know. I'm failing on multitasking, so I apologize.
Thanks, no, don't worry about it. Thank you.
You're off the hook now. And it's back to me.
All right, yay.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Maderi. It's time for
Welcome,
our
Judge.
improvement team report. Scott, are you gonna do that?
Yes, Judge. Good morning, board members. If you turn to page 67, you'll see the improvement team report for the last quarter. During that time, we did a planning study for Tarrant County for a mental health managed assigned counsel program. And I actually went up there and did a presentation to the judges along with Elise Ferguson from Collin County. We've already received 2 formal requests for rural regional public defender offices to do planning studies for them. And those 2 requests would cover a total of 18 counties. So we have begun working on that. We provided technical assistance to a number of public defender offices and MACs that y'all funded with grants over the summer. So helping them get started. As Jeff mentioned earlier, the preliminary investigator report has come out, and you will see a link to that report in the improvement team report on page 67. Kristen Meeks with our team has been helping the counties in the Concho Valley Public Defender Office area, as well as Walker and Madison counties implement automate their indigent defense appointment systems. We gave a number of trainings, particularly to court personnel around the state during the quarter. Kathleen gave a presentation to the Judicial Summit on mental health earlier this month. And we also have did a number of presentations. Jeff, with the help of Kathleen, Kristen, and Olivia, did a number of presentations at 6 law schools over the last few months to really recruit and try to drum up interest among law school students to enter a career in public defense. As you all have heard earlier today, offices have been having some recruiting issues. As you know, in the rural parts of the state, there are retirements, unfortunately deaths as well. And so there's a real need in the rural parts of the state for new lawyers to enter this career. So we did 6 presentations to the law school. Jeff, do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, we have 10 law schools in Texas, and we've been to now all 3 in Houston, 2 of the 3 in the Metroplex, as well as St. Mary's. So that really only leaves 4 that we haven't been to. A lot of this kind of came from chief public defenders across Texas saying, we want better connections to these law schools. And I'm proud that TIDC has helped make those connections. And in fact, when I've spoken at these law schools, I've brought along with me a combination of chief public defenders and recent alumni from those universities who are now practicing as public defenders. And they've been great. On the low end, we've had about a dozen students. On the high end, about 3 or 4 dozen students at each of these events. So very well attended, a lot of interest in it. So very excited about that.
Yeah, so I think the plan is we'll continue to do that going forward, because it's apparent that the need is there and it's not going to be going away anytime soon. So we'll keep you all apprised of our works with the law schools and trying to get more law school students interested, new attorneys interested in becoming going into public defense.
Have you seen the commercials for to be public defenders?
No.
Yes, they're very well done. They have lawyers talking about being a public defender and a calling and, encouraging. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I gotta pay attention enough to see who sponsors the commercial, but there is a commercial that I've seen several times.
Very cool. I did not know that.
Great.
Let's see, what else do I want to let y'all know about? You know, I think y'all know we meet with the chief public defenders every month, just to kind of keep them apprised of what's going on and also for them to give us feedback. We also have other groups that we have started gathering together. So the indigent defense coordinators, we meet every quarter. Olivia's been leading that group. We just had a meeting of the folks who work in social services, social workers, or case managers who work for public defender offices. Olivia led that meeting as well. So those have been very interesting, and I think we're building community across the state amongst folks who work in public defense. Kathleen, would you like to give a quick update on the defense leaders?
Yes, absolutely. So this board previously funded a second cohort of the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program. And so we are in the process right now of interviewing for our second class. And participation in Gideon's Promise training and the TCDLA training really does contribute to longevity in the profession. So it is also kind of in line with what we've been talking about today. So, and of course, Harris County is our major partner in that as well. So it's very exciting. Interviewing all the new folks, and the new 2-week boot camp will take place in April of 2023.
In Houston.
Actually in San Antonio.
Oh, in San Antonio, but in Texas, not.
In Texas, yes. This whole program is meant with the second cohort to be more cost effective and entirely in Texas with Texas trainers.
In the same location.
We might change up the hotel because there was some issues with food. But we are definitely going to keep it in state. So it might be somewhere else though.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank Jeff and his staff for their forward thinking in establishing these groups that get together quarterly or monthly, because they didn't exist. And I think they're very helpful, and I'm glad y'all are doing it.
It's really good.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah, I want to second that.
Me too.
Okay, I think that is, unless there are any questions or comments, well, let's move on to Mr. Alex Brennan for policy system.
Okay, so policy and standards met since the last full board meeting, and the main point of discussion was about a statewide standard for indigents, and that was based on a previous policy and standards meeting where the Deason Center of SMU came and presented their report recommending such a standard. So what came out of our more recent meeting was an instruction request to staff to come back with something in writing. And so what you see in your notebook at starting page 69 is what they have come up with. And I'm going to ask Wesley to lay that out.
Sure, and Alex, I can, Mr. Bennett, I can step in for a minute and then hand it off to Wesley. I think Wesley will have a short presentation for y'all, since we realize that not everybody's on Policies and Standards Committee and hasn't had the benefit of seeing those presentations. We'll do an abbreviated presentation for y'all. As Mr. Bennett pointed out, SMU came and presented to Policies and Standards Committee. They presented a report that they did on indigent screening. Texas is one of either 4 or 5 states that does not have a statewide standard on that. So the Policies and Standards Committee asked our staff to do additional research. A lot of that was led by Kristen Meeks, who unfortunately, like me, has been ill the past few days, so she's out. But she did some excellent research. We did come back with some written proposals on this. The one thing I really want to highlight, that Policies and Standards did ask that we communicate with the counties too, to kind of get their input on it. And I talked at some length with Jim Allison, and I'm waiting to hear back from him to get some additional feedback. But the initial feedback from the counties is that there isn't a lot of support for a statewide standard, but there could be a lot of support for a guideline. Just so everybody on the board knows, we've never really given counties any kind of guidance on what indigent screening should look like as far as a template or anything along those lines. So that's the feedback we got from the counties. And with that, I'll hand it over to Wesley.
Thanks, Jeff. We do have a PowerPoint, but I believe Megan's going to run that for me, but I will just go ahead and get started. So we're going to give a summary of what the Policies and Standards Committee heard about at 2 different meetings. on indigent standards, both a summary of the Decent Center report, as well as what our own research, especially Kristen Meeks, and I want to give a big shout out to her. She would be giving this presentation if she was well. I'm so sorry she isn't. If you go to the next slide, we're going to try and go through this quickly. I know it's already late in the morning. Indigence basics is going to be the first thing I'm going to talk about, and then continuing on, Megan, there's two more bullets, is problems in Texas, and then potential solutions. And then going on, the starting point is what is indigent? And of course, indigent means lots of different things, but in this context, it's defined by statute, and that is a person who is not financially able to employ counsel. So that's the definition. If you can't hire counsel, you're indigent for our purposes for appointment of counsel. Next slide, please. And there's two basic approaches to indigence. There's an income standard, and that's where we're going to spend most of the time. And then there are presumptions. So income is how much do you make, basically. And a presumption is where we can, based on some individual factor, presume that a person is indigent and can't afford to hire counsel, such as qualifying for a means-tested public benefit, for example. I'll go over a few more of those in a few minutes. So moving down, there's two basic approaches used both nationally and in Texas. And the main ones are federal poverty guidelines. And so these are published annually by the U.S. Health and Human Services Department. They were developed in the 60s, and they're really based only on the cost of food. It's a multiple of the cost of food for a family to support themselves. So it's not really a full measure. In fact, the Census Bureau just considers them a statistical yardstick. And then the second model is what we're calling the Tarrant County model, because that's the primary user in Texas, and it's the living wage calculator. And this has two additional things that the federal poverty guidelines don't. It actually looks at the cost of all basic necessities, including food, but also housing, healthcare, childcare, transportation, all the things that you really need to live. And it's geographically focused. So in Texas, it's at the county level. Actually, nationally, it's at the county level, whereas the federal poverty guidelines is $1 amount for the whole country. It doesn't change from place to place like this one does. And then moving on, kind of looking at how these two compare and the multipliers that we see in place, looking at a single person with no dependents, because all of these are based on the family size, both models are. And we just picked a sampling of counties, large and small, around the state. And the first column is the federal poverty guidelines at 125% multiplier. So basically 25% more than that 100% level, comes out to only $17,000. And this is the percentage that is used in most counties in Texas in the indigent defense plans. So effectively, they're saying if you make more than $17,000 as a single person, you're expected to hire counsel. At 150%, and there's a number of counties that use this, it's just over $20,000. And at 200%, it's $27,000. We put 200%, it's not commonly used in Texas indigent defense, but it is a very common marker for means-tested public benefit programs. Around the 200% level is a common marker. And then the last column, you can see the Tarrant County model. It varies quite a bit from place to place. So from a low of about 29,000 in some of our rural counties up to over 37,000 in Dallas. So you can really see the impact of that geographical localization of the standard. And then going to the next slide, we have the same basic numbers for a family of four. So you can see those numbers don't change at all at the federal poverty guideline level. Once again, it's the same across the country. So for a family of four, it's 34,688. It goes up to about 41,000 at 150%, and then 55,000 at 200%. And then you can see the living wage calculator, the Tarrant County model, the variation across the state from 68 to about 78,000, depending upon what jurisdiction you're located in. So that's it kind of on the income screening in a nutshell. And then indigence presumptions, there's a few of those that are in use. The first one is institutionalized, and that's someone who is already resides in a public mental health facility or is incarcerated, for instance, in prison at the time of the alleged offense. And almost all the indigent defense plans use this as well as the income standard. So it's effectively a shortcut to screening. If you're in that situation, you're presumed indigent. The next one is receiving public benefits. And this is, there's a whole assortment of them, but the main ones are food stamps, Medicaid, temporary assistance for needy families, or public housing. So if you're already receiving or eligible to receive any of those public benefits, generally that is a shortcut to screening, and you're found indigent for appointment of counsel purposes. The third one is remaining incarcerated for some number of days without retaining counsel. And this is not, it doesn't appear in many indigent defense plans, but it is in fact the practice in most jurisdictions that if someone may not qualify immediately at their arrest, but if they still are in jail some days later, it's generally assumed that they aren't going to be able to retain counsel, that they're still in jail and haven't retained counsel because they will have typically lost their job and the income that might be used to hire an attorney. And then the last two, if the person is disabled or over 65 years old, they aren't common in the indigent screening process for our in our indigent defense plans, but they are typical and common qualifiers for means tested public benefits. So we added those as well. And next we're going to go to problems, and I believe Jeff is going to take this section.
Sure, thank you, Wesley. So, the program that we have right now as far as indigent screening in Texas really is county-based. As I mentioned, there are only, I think, 3 or maybe 4 other states that are that don't have a statewide standard. There are benefits and drawbacks to that. Some of the drawbacks, we've got almost 400 standards across the state. Many counties have a different standard for juvenile cases than they do for misdemeanor cases than they do for felony cases. So we get multiple standards in each county. Many of them have become pretty complex. So if you look at El Paso as an example, El Paso's indigent screening plan is 19 paragraphs long. So it's become a little unwieldy, I think, in the absence of TIDC guidance. Very hard to apply as a result of that. Many times we're seeing delays in proceedings as a result. Next slide. So what we're seeing, sometimes we see an issue with them being unpredictable and unclear. We're seeing some standards, unfortunately, that don't always comply with Article 1051B, that standard of being able to afford counsel. The variety of standards makes it really difficult to have a text solution. The one thing, I'd add one caveat there, I don't want to imply that there's been no technological solution. TextShare, which TIDC has helped fund, has been used in several different counties, and that's been helpful. But it is difficult to create a text solution for close to 400 different standards. We've also seen a lot of delays in out-of-county arrests when you have counties that have multiple standards. If somebody has a warrant in one county but they're arrested in another, we see some issues there. So again, there are some benefits to having the multiple approaches. There are certainly some problems that SMU identified and that our staff has identified as well. Next slide. This is, I mentioned El Paso. This is paragraph 1 of El Paso's 19-paragraph indigent screening standard. So they actually reached out to TIDC staff recently saying that they have to streamline this, they need a better approach. Next slide. And these get into some of the SMU recommendations. These are not necessarily staff recommendations, but SMU has recommended statewide standards. They recommended considering local cost of living, like the Tarrant County model. The one kind of thing I'd mention, the one note of caution on that, I think on the staff side, we do think that Tarrant County model is excellent because it does consider local cost of living. However, it would be a very big change. We really only have one county right now out of 254 that's using that standard. So that's one note of caution on that. The SMU recommended presumptions for incarceration and for people receiving public benefits. They recommended protecting essential assets. That first bit, presumptions for incarceration and for people who are receiving public benefits, That's largely universal across Texas right now. That would not be a big change. Protecting essential assets would be a larger change, though, that we're not seeing that in most places. They also recommended a holistic assessment of income, assets, and expenses, considering cost of retaining counsel. Next slide. And this is getting to staff recommendations. As Wesley pointed out, you do have something in your meeting book. Policies and Standards Committee really tasked us with coming up with different options, and you see some of those options here. One would be for income standards, really using that Tarrant County model. As you see the recommendation toward the end, that could be good, as I mentioned, but really would be a big change, I think, for Texas. We're only using that in one county right now. Federal poverty guidelines, 200% of that, that's the staff recommendation as a standard. And Wesley, that's really what he's put together with Kristen, and you see in your book. That is the staff recommendation. The one, again, big caveat there is that although the counties, as I've talked to Jim Allison, although the counties would support a guideline, they would not support a standard. In other words, they would support something where TIDC would provide some additional guidance, but they would not really support a mandate on this point. And then the last option that we presented to Policies and Standards was 150% of the guidelines, or sorry, the federal poverty guidelines. Benefit to that is it's a little bit more common and really wouldn't be as big of a divergence from existing practice. So of those three, the one that you see in your book is 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Next slide. And these are the indigence presumptions. So if you remember from what Wesley was saying, there's really two ways to determine whether somebody qualifies for counsel. One is income, which is what we were just talking about. How much do you make? But the other is, even if we don't look at your income, we presume that you're indigent if X is happening. And a lot of those are taking place across Texas right now. One of the presumptions is if you're institutionalized. That's near universal across Texas right now and would be a staff recommendation. Another is if you're receiving public benefits. That's also nearly universal across Texas already. Another is if a defendant remains incarcerated for 11 days without retaining private counsel. This one's a little bit different. It's really common across Texas, but a lot of it's de facto. A lot of times that's not in the indigence standards that are reported to TIDC. The last two are less common. We don't really see these very often across Texas, presuming that somebody's indigent if they're disabled, or presuming that somebody's indigent if they're 65 years or older. There's some benefits to that, but it would be a bigger change. Not something we see very often. Next slide. And I think that's it. Wesley, is there anything you wanted to add before we open to discussion?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it. Yeah. And then
Mr.
for your meeting book, the rules that appear at the end of this section were based on the staff recommendation. So it was not approved or voted on by the Policies and Standards Committee. In fact, they were developed since the last committee meeting. So those appear on page 77 and 78.
That's right. And Mr. Bunnan, as chair of Policies and Standards, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, you have a motion here, but it's not a committee motion. And so I would really encourage a discussion before we got anywhere near that, because it seems like the main points of contention is this going to be mandatory, which a regulation would be, or could there be a guideline that counties could accept and put in their plan as they wish? And then the other part seems the other main point of contention is what would be the financial level that is being recommended. So I would certainly welcome, certainly Judge Keller has thought about this, so I think maybe you could start.
Okay, thank you. I certainly will. As Wesley pointed out, this was discussed at the Policies and Standards Committee meeting. And the staff's recommendation at that point, I think, was to adopt statewide standards. Is that right? Yes.
That's correct.
I know that I did not want to do that. My impression was that Mr. Bunnan didn't want to do that either. That.
Well, let me interrupt.
Okay, please.
The impression, I do want to do that. I didn't think it was
okay.
feasible.
Okay.
I didn't think we were going to get complete buy-in. So that's why I asked them to look at it that way.
Okay. So we agreed that this was not something that we thought could go forward, at least. And I have a lot of comments. The first is, I think there's some question about whether we can adopt statewide standards. And I'm going to read you what the statute, like government code and Jeff pointed this out, the commission shall, this indicates that we could. The commission shall develop policies and standards for providing something representation and other defense services to indigent defendants, blah, 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 including standards for determining whether a person accused of a crime or juvenile offense is indigent. So that sounds like we can. But the Code of Criminal Procedure, which was adopted initially, this part was, says the judges of the county courts, statutory county courts, and district courts trying criminal cases in each county by local rule shall adopt and publish written countywide procedures for timely and fairly appointing counsel. And then this is 2604. Section L says procedures adopted under subsection A must include procedures and financial standards for determining whether defendant is indigent. So initially, when the Fair Defense Act was passed, that power was retained by the judges and explicitly given by the statute. Whether the later government code, which I think was adopted in 2011, provision is supposed to abrogate that, I think is at least debatable. Because I think there may be a way to read them together, they may not. But that's not my initial concern. My initial concern is that one of our other kind of principles that has been a part of this organization since the beginning, and I think is one of the reasons it's flourished, is that we don't tell counties what to do unless there's a very good reason to. That we believe that counties know better what's going on in their own jurisdiction. And when a statewide organization imposes demands on a county, it's not only the best thing to do, it's resented. So I agree with Alex that this is probably not something that is going to be well received in imposing statewide standards. Aside from that, I don't think guidelines is the word I would use, because we have guidelines for caseloads, and those have been used to criticize counties that don't meet the guidelines. I think as far as our organization helping counties understand the benefits of living wage calculator or increased, or maybe that there are really not a lot of downsides to 150 or 200% of federal poverty guidelines. I think that's what we ought to be doing. But I think that there is no compelling reason to, even if we're able to adopt statewide guidelines. And I'm questioning some of the presumptions anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But my thought is that this is such a good idea, tell the counties about them and let them adopt it on their own. Because I don't really see a compelling reason for us to do it, except I think there is a big benefit for this organization's staff in keeping track of what's going on and in comparing counties. But I just think this is a very big deal and we shouldn't do it.
I agree with you 100,000%, especially with this presumptions. You know, when it's a presumption, it's a hard stop. Well, I'm 65 years old and yeah, I don't know, you know, there's quite a few of us that would be fabulous, wouldn't it? Yeah, to be a lawyer just because I'm 65. That's silly. And disabled, I think is the same issue because a lot of them have trusts and different things. I think you really need to ask more questions and not have a hard stop, which is what I always object to the presumptions, because when I hear presumption, that the question I ask is it rebuttable? Because I will tell you that a lot of the software and the stuff that we're using, when you fill in that little thing about, you know, you're receiving a government assistance, that's it. There's no more questions. Well, I had someone in my court, I probably have told you guys this a million times, this story, that I was horrified, was in a family law case, had a huge trust fund, had a lot of expenses for him and his wife. He was about 70 something years old. And they came to the hard stop when his expenses exceeded his income. So in my misdemeanor court, because he had a family assault, qualified for court appointed attorney, he's a freaking millionaire. I was like, no, this is not good.
I totally agree. And I think the same thing applies for disabled. People are labeled disabled for reasons other than getting money. I have a friend who is disabled as a veteran. He has plenty of money. He has PTSD, and it was diagnosed many years after he fought in Vietnam. It has nothing to do with his ability to hire counsel, or his, you know, pretty much anything else.
His ability to earn money.
Yeah.
May I interject?
Yes.
I have a totally different opinion about that. I completely understand. And I do not support unfunded mandates on counties. I completely agree. And my only hesitation would be putting all of them all at once. I think that there's a need for some form of all of these, but not at once. I think that if you're going to do it, which doesn't sound like you're supporting anyway, you wouldn't do them all at once because the funding doesn't come with it. But in terms of adjusting the standards for income, I would say that you do have authority to make that standard to implement it. It's in statute. And I guess, you guys are judges, I'm not, but statutory construction. I mean, you would just use your legal brain, and determine, but I don't think that that's an issue. Because you guys have standards on what they have to do anyway to get the dollars, right? We already say that these are the things they have to do to comply. And so for the standards, if there's over 400 standards in some counties, as Jeff said, have different standards in different juvenile and regular cases, it provides confusion. It complicates things, and people want to have a level of something that they can expect, they can rely on. Instead of seeing it go, flip-flop in different ways. And so a lot of times at the legislature, we try, we first rely on the local government, but then when you're seeing too many different policies in place that conflict with each other, people have a level of expectancy. So if I live in Fort Worth and Dallas.
Who does? Because in your jurisdiction, if they've established indigent standards.
Well, I'm just
confused.
likening it to that. But if I am say I'm in Tarrant County.
Yes.
And my juvenile court uses the federal poverty level of 125, but the regular criminal district court goes with this living wage.
Does that really happen? Because don't we have in our plans, you have, like my county had two plans, one for county and district courts. No. Yes, yes, two plans, and then the juvenile plan. Yes,
that's three different plans.
No, the county and district courts are the same.
Okay, the one.
And then you have the juvenile plan. So there's no, in my opinion, there's no confusion, and you guys know exactly what the standards are because they're laid out in there. And so are the exceptions. I think I did the initial one for Medina County. But
Well, he might be two different standards. So maybe one's doing 125 and the other person's doing 150.
Realistically, that would be different jurisdictions. So it's a local decision.
Well, he said in the same jurisdiction, there could be a different.
Is that true?
So Judge, Tarrant County, they were using for juveniles a completely different standard for adult criminal. And they I believe they have two different plans, one for felony and one for misdemeanor. I believe those, they may be even a little different between those.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's a local decision.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is that I feel like we have authority, and so one of the reasons why you would set the minimum, you would set the standard, I guess. And I wrote down rebuttable too. I'm with you. It's like, is it a rebuttable presumption? I mean, even that gets me there. That means I get past the threshold. But is it rebuttable, meaning that do you have this trust that can, whatever you're talking about?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, is that something that we could put in rule? I don't know.
I'm so opposed to mandating this for anybody.
Well, I'm just saying, I feel like there is, if they're saying the numbers were very telling at $16,000 for a single person, that's when you qualify. You have to make 16,000 or less to qualify for a court appointed. If I make $17,000, I'm still poor, and that's not enough for me to qualify. I mean, to be able to hire my own attorney. I wouldn't even be eligible for a court appointed.
Well, there's so many factors on that because, like, for example, with child support,
Mhm.
okay, do we have the child support guidelines? Well, if you say, hey, I can't afford it, you're like, so what? Borrow the money, because child support is an obligation and there's no excuse. I look at that and I think about child support. Men who are in the state penitentiary or whatever you call it these days, they still have to pay their child support. But now we're making the taxpayers pay for the attorney's fees of persons who are accused of committing crimes, which maybe they did and maybe they didn't, but they're in that situation not by something that we did to them.
I know, but they're innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying not to say that they did it or not, but they're in that situation because of something that they did to be in that situation. So I'm just saying, we do this with child support, but with child support, the presumption is the opposite, that they can pay regardless of their circumstances.
But are we judging their personal financial decisions? Is that,
No.
okay, because so like the
No.
person that says, I mean, they make, the bare
Yeah.
minimum, but they drive a Mercedes. Are we saying, well, you shouldn't be driving a Mercedes?
Well,
because you
my
drive a
question would be,
Mercedes, now you
why
don't
should I
qualify?
pay for their court-appointed attorney if they're driving a Mercedes?
Because we have
Your,
standards.
your insurance is higher because you're driving a Mercedes.
So then that means that to me,
Your
it sounds like
Expenses are higher.
then I'm inserting my
Well, it's
opinion,
like me saying, I'm not gonna hire an attorney, but I went out and bought this diamond ring.
right?
So, hello, how'd you get the diamond ring? Well, you had it financed, right?
Well, that's why we need standards.
Yeah.
To me, no, I think that's why, because I don't think it's my place to judge somebody's decision. I mean, right now in front of me, you are a person.
Do you
who's
feel
accused.
anything for the taxpayer who's paying? For
I
this?
do, but I know that we have an obligation.
We
Right.
are fulfilling that obligation, but that doesn't mean that we don't, that we can't consider all of the aspects of that person.
I know, but everybody's situation is different.
Finances.
Yes, I understand,
Yeah,
but everybody's situation is different.
it is, and that's why I oppose standards. That's why, because everybody's situation is different. I might have a rich daddy, but I've made a decision to work in a private school and make 20,000 a year versus working in a public school and making 50 grand, right?
Mhm.
I get a DWI, I get accused of a DWI. I have to hire a lawyer. It doesn't matter whether I'm convicted or not. So I've made that decision in my life to make 20 grand a year, but I have a dad over there that will give me anything that I want.
So
Right?
would you, I mean,
I would say go borrow from your parents.
but if they make 20,000 and they live in Tarrant County, they
Do you
would be
have the
eligible.
ability, do you have the ability to get the money?
But they would be eligible under that number.
So
20,000.
well, depends on which standard they use.
I know, but it sounds
Yeah.
like you wouldn't give them they wouldn't qualify under your rule because they have a way to get money.
In some instances, yes.
Okay, see, this is exactly why your opinion, your position is exactly why we need standards. Because I feel like we cannot usurp our opinion, our moral judgment, or our moral decisions on somebody else's. We cannot
I think it's
impugn that.
purely financial, and it's purely financial.
And the only thing other thing I would say is, I would do it piecemeal. I wouldn't do everything at once. I would make a adjustment and then also have some funding. I agree about the disabled concern. I do see some issues in that, and the over 65, perhaps a rebuttable presumption, because if I am well off, but I'm over
Still employed.
65.
A lot of them are still employed.
Yeah, does that make me automatically indigent? No, maybe not, because my income is above whatever your threshold. Is that how that works? So if I'm 66 and I make $70,000, I wouldn't qualify, right? Or I
Well, the
would qualify.
presumption would mean you just stop right there. The question would be, are you over 65?
Well, that's why I'm asking, would it be a
Done.
rebuttable presumption?
Not the way that it's suggested.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, I can tell.
Well, that's what I'm
So-
saying. I don't mind. I'm
Yeah.
concerned about that part.
And Jeff, it was in the meeting book, but I'm sure there's a number of members of the board that didn't read it closely, so. Because there are so many severable parts of it that are under discussion, maybe it could come back. Like with motions for individual parts of it. And as recommendations. What do you think?
Yeah, I think from the
We have
the staff.
anything, right now, we have a consensus on.
Yeah, I think from the staff perspective, I think since policies and standards last met, we had a chance to do some outreach to the counties, and it really, what we heard from the counties mirrored what Judge Keller was saying, that there really wasn't a lot of appetite from the counties for a standard, but there was a lot of appetite from the counties to get some more guidance, that they felt like, when we talked to not only county officials, but, we have this group of indigent defense coordinators that meets on a regular basis. And they've been struggling because they can't call their neighbors next door when they're trying to apply something that needed clarity, because the neighbors next door have a very different approach to it. I think
We need a majority on what that guidance would be, so that's why I'm saying maybe break it down. Because obviously, the disabled and over 65 is controversial, and
right.
And there are but some parts of it may not be controversial, so maybe.
Right.
May I say something else, please, before we go on?
Yeah.
Before staff spends any more time on this at all, I would like to hear what the other members have to say about it, because this has been a staff-driven promotion. The staff's been promoting it, and from what I've heard you say, the people in the counties are not in favor of it. We're split at this point, but before you spend any more time on it, maybe we should hear from the other members of the board. Y'all, you speak up?
If I can make a comment as a county judge that prepares a budget, I'd like to see what a fiscal note would be to the counties if we do absolute standards, what it would cost, and is there going to be a fiscal note for the state? If we're going to increase our cost.
Well, I think that Tarrant, we have information from Tarrant County, and if I remember correctly, they had an 81% appointment rate for probably felonies, misdemeanors, something, whatever. And after they adopted the living wage calculator, it only went up to 83%. So it wasn't a big difference. Wasn't there another county that used to use the living wage calculator and dropped it?
That was Lubbock, yeah, for misdemeanors.
And did we ask you why they dropped it?
I haven't spoken to them recently, Wesley. I don't know if you have.
Okay, so cost is one thing we should look at. What do you think in general about imposing statewide standards?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you, yes.
Absolutely not.
Okay. I can't see everybody. Mr. Rios, I think you're in the corner.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I'm on the fence right now. I can see both sides. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I hadn't given it a lot of thought, but I will.
Okay, great.
I'm here, Judge Keller. I
yes,
am,
Judge,
yeah, I'm against the standards at this time. Now, whether or not we carve out some that are not as politically charged or controversial, then maybe we can do that. But, you know, I kind of, you know, sitting on the district court bench, I kind of agree with y'all when you're saying, I mean, I think every single thing, either it should be a rebuttable presumption, but I don't think standards across the board is something that we should do as of right now. I mean, if staff comes back with something and pigeonholes different things, then of course, you know, I think we can come back on it. But I think the standard itself would not, I don't think it's warranted, especially if the counties don't even want it.
Okay, and I can't see, is Chief Justice Raddick, are you still on?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I think we lost your
Down
judge.
there on the bottom corner. That's,
we have-
no, I mean, this,
I think we have Mr. Mike Ward from Senator Whitmire's office.
okay, that's who I can
Sorry,
think,
Judge.
yes. Mr. Ward?
Where's he at?
He's on behalf of.
Where's he at?
Oh, he's not visible on this
okay.
one.
He's muted.
Call for Senator
I'm gonna-
Whitmire.
Yeah, sorry, I was on another call here. I'm going to brief Senator Whitmire on this and update him, and we can have him get back with Jeff and the members of the commission here. There's a lot of really interesting issues here, but I don't know at this moment where he stands on this particular thing the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Have I missed any of the other members? No, I think so. Okay, well, in the meantime, I'm gonna ask you all to look at the government code provision and the code of criminal procedure provision and see whether you think we have the authority or if this is deliberately supposed to be left to the judges. And maybe we need to try to clean that up in whatever legislative language comes out with the child protection thing that we're looking at. Okay, so Jeff, I think there are enough people for you to go forward and at least, and I want to point out also, when we asked you to come up with options for indigent defense determination, one of my head in mind was do nothing, and that was not one of y'all's recommendations. But I think that's something we also ought to keep in mind, that unless something is really going wrong, we shouldn't consider changing it. And I think if the people from the Decent Center came and talked to us, there were a few counties that were not doing well and that needed work, but by far, most of the counties were doing doing a good enough job that they weren't an issue in regard to paying for indigent defense or indigent presumptions or whatever we're looking at.
And Judge, I would say at this point, I think it's, and tell me if you think of it differently, but it really doesn't sound like there's much appetite for standards from the counties or from most of the board members. But it does sound like there's some appetite to at least get some guidance in some way from TIDC. That's something that if you all wanted us to, we could certainly work on that. Something that would not be mandatory, but perhaps something in the templates or something else that could help counties out. But we also don't have to do that. We of course defer to the board on that.
I worry about the same issue that we did that for caseloads. And we're going to go down that path, and pretty soon it becomes, this is the standard.
Yeah, and you're criticized, your county's criticized if you don't meet
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, something's held against you. I don't like that. I think in your training, you guys do magnificent training. I've attended several of them and they're just great. I think if you make that the topic of one of your sessions and talk about and present the different standards, the living wage standard to me sounds really interesting.
Well, and that's the idea. If this is a good thing and it makes it easier for counties and more predictable, then the county should want to adopt it on their own. And
that's probably what will happen. And so if you cover it in your training, do you guys still do those trainings where you get into groups after you have discussions, and then you have a plan of attack and you go back to your county and those are great.
A workshop.
Yes.
Yeah, the workshop. Yeah.
We haven't had.
Yes,
one in
those are
couple years.
great. Oh, you have because of
Because of
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah.
I
I thought those were the best. You almost always got people doing stuff, action afterwards. And if that raises the awareness and gives them other ideas, then the counties will implement it and the judges would probably be very grateful.
Only thing, okay, so yes, I think that's a wonderful idea. It's just, I think counties would do it if they had the money. They don't have the money to do it. And so,
Evil.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I don't think it's if they wanted to do it, they would. No, they would, but it's the money. And so if I like what you said, I didn't know it was only 3% more or, 2% more. 2% more that we're missing or that would qualify. So maybe that's what you guys could help them through a program, which you were talking about, Judge, saying that if you were to adopt this type of standard or eligibility, then you may have an increase in 3% or 5%, whatever the number may be, if you were to look at whatever their standards are right now. And that could get the conversation going.
Yes.
And start it and get their brain, the wheels turning. But I think I do agree that this needs more work because I can't even, progressive Nicole can't get behind everything on this, without a rebuttable presumption or something. But I do believe that guidance, standard, whatever you want to call it, rules, whatever, are in order to limit or reduce the changes in different areas, even within your same county. That way we can have a level of expectancy. When we come in and open the door, we know what we're looking at. We know that you have the 125 all across the board. That way we're not trying to guess, oh, wait, let me pull out this file and see what they got.
Yeah, and I think most counties do have some automatics, and that is the poverty level, whether it be at 125, 150, or 200%. And receiving public assistance. I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, it sounds like
they do.
They may have both. They may have 125 in this area and then, I mean, literally, you could probably have a family that has a parent that's in front of the court that isn't, asking for a court appointment. And then they got a child that's in trouble but they don't qualify for the child because there is 150 or something like that. The parents is 125. So it's like, oh my goodness, I can't get
with the juveniles. I think that most courts automatically appoint whether they say they can afford. I know I did because I can't do anything with that juvenile unless that juvenile has an attorney. So really the filling out of the affidavit is just a formality to comply with our requirements.
Yeah, it's an automatic appointment. It's juvenile. You can't go forward.
That's right.
So
you can't go forward.
Oh, okay.
The law.
But will we require them to have a plan then?
Well, we have to. That's what TIDC requires, and we do it, and that's fine. I don't have any objection with that. But honestly, everybody gets a lawyer in juvenile court.
Okay.
Whether your parent makes for $300,000 a year or not, whatever. And
you come back and with restitution.
Yeah, when you,
Oh.
if you get to that point, Judge, yeah.
So is that something that we could ask the, I guess, the staff to do, is to maybe develop a program or a workshop and come back to us with the plan and then let us know how they would implement it? Is that something we could do?
What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, we
Like
we
what
could
you just
certainly
talked
do that. What Judge Torres had referred to was our indigent defense workshop, which is, yeah, I agree. I think they've been great when we've done them. Usually we've done it every other year. In non-legislative years, a lot of it's just staff capacity, but we could certainly do one that's focused on indigent standards and just tell counties what options are out there, both in terms of the standards, but also technological solutions to it, and just
Yeah, there's
expose
a
them to all
lot.
that. Yeah.
Maybe you
Would
could
that
have
be
a
like-
best practices guideline.
That's what I thought it was. This was trying to be like the best
Yeah.
practices.
Yeah.
And I would like that, best practices, that would be.
Okay.
I'm not sure I would go with even with best practices. Because I'll tell you what, because I think it's hard to determine what the best practices are for each county. And I think the counties and the judges in each county can determine the best practices for their own county.
Well, I think the best practice would be a laundry list of options.
Yeah, and my vision is that at this workshop that you have, each county talks about their best, what they consider to be their best practice. And then you can kind of take off of each other. If something
Yeah.
sounds, the living wage thing sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think it's great for people to be made aware of the options and what
Mhm.
other counties are doing and where they can get help if they want to look at the living wage calculator.
Yeah,
Like a toolkit. That'd be-
Yeah,
yeah, I like that
Toolkit.
word. Like the family law toolkit, it's always very handy.
And
Okay.
yeah, if that's the will of the board, we could definitely develop some sort of toolkit for the board members to review, and then perhaps a workshop that we could do just so people know kind of what's out there and what the options are.
And make it specific. So if I live in Hidalgo County, if I were to adopt the living wage, what is it called? Living wage calculator? How much more would how much more would it cost my county to implement it?
Where does the data come through from that?
I don't know, but they did it up there, so they were able to do
Where
it.
did that 83 and 81%?
Yeah, where did that come
That
from?
was Tarrant County, there was a Greg Shooter, he was a courts manager.
Mhm. And you said they went from 81% appointments in some to 83%.
That's correct.
Okay, and what were they before they adopted the living wage calculator?
I think that was like the 81%.
I mean, but were they 200% of the federal population?
What were their
That makes a
guidelines? It
difference.
was 150 though. I felt it was 150.
Tarrant County was.
But they were able to guess what those count, like that one, except, I guess the page that they had, they said if some counties are with a B, if they were to do the living wage, this would be the dollar amount that people would qualify.
And
Yeah,
there
that
was a significant difference when they're like.
It was like $3,000.
Yeah, that was a little speculative. That
Oh, it
wasn't
was?
based on real, that was picking certain families and certain amounts. I mean, it was an example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Oh, I thought
based on-
it made it look, you guys make the job look easy. You make it look easy.
I think
You guys
that's
are doing a
right.
good
I
job.
think that was based.
I've
They
been,
did,
I've
they made it
ventured,
look like-
I've been ventured to say the smaller and the more rural the county, the greater the increase would be. I think Tarrant County, 2% would not be indicative of what would be in Real County or Bandera County. It may be 15 or 20% based on what you adopt.
Yeah.
We don't know.
You
Right.
don't.
Yeah. and that
What
concerns me.
foundation did you mention? You read a report. Did you say Thiessen Foundation?
Decent.
Decent.
DEASON, they're
Yeah.
from SMU.
Doug Deason?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
DEASON. at SMU.
And Jeff, maybe you can make that report.
Yeah.
available to everybody, or just send the link out.
Yeah, absolutely. We can share that. And for Lubbock County, and Judge Keller, you had a good question about this. I don't know why Lubbock County is no longer using living wage calculator. I remember talking to Judge Mark Hawker, who had helped implement it out there for misdemeanors. And basically his assessment was that after he implemented it, it didn't change the number of people who were receiving counsel. They stayed about even, kind of like Tarrant County, but it changed, it sorted people a little bit differently. So there were some people who wouldn't get counsel under one model, but they would under the other. But in aggregate, it was about the same number of people.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know why they abandoned it actually, but I can find that out.
Sure would like to know. Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, so no action on 15. And next is
Mr.
on-
Bunny, can I say something real quick? I just want to say thanks to the board members for grappling with this. I know this is a tough issue, but it's an important issue. So I just want to say thanks for taking enough time to talk through it. We appreciate it.
And I like this board because we all come from different backgrounds and different positions, and it's so good to know what you think
Yeah.
versus you at the appellate level and me that I was a.
And we all got thick skin.
Well, hopefully by now, right?
No, but it's interesting to hear the perspective. I'm not a judge and I feel like I'm out of my realm, but that's what makes
And
this
you're in a
board
large
great.
jurisdiction, right? Are you in a large jurisdiction?
I actually have the largest house, yes, this year. Now,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
My message would be send some money from the state.
I would if we could. I understand what my county judge tells me all the time, no unfunded mandate.
I think y'all are pretty flush this time.
This
Okay.
time, yeah.
So the next is a report on appointed council statistics for Jill.
If you could, please turn to page 79 of the meeting notebooks. I'll try to be brief. I know we're a bit over. So I'm going to talk about appointed council caseloads. Every year, auditors and treasurers have to report to TIDC the amount that they spend on indigent defense, and they have to list this out by attorney and by the number of cases that attorney has disposed. All of these numbers are preliminary. I gathered them from November 15th. They may change a little bit. But the way we measure caseloads has some limitations. And we gather caseloads based on how many cases an attorney had at disposition. If an attorney has a lot of cases in the pipeline, but only disposes a few cases, it looks like the attorney just had a few cases. On the other hand, if the attorney disposes a lot of cases that have been lingering for many years, it looks like the attorney had a lot of cases. And so what happened was we had COVID and very few cases were disposed. And so we were probably getting under reports of attorney caseloads, and now COVID is largely gone and a lot of those cases flushed out. And so we may be over reporting a little bit. So with that, most attorneys do not have excessive appointed caseloads. The median appointed caseload was 30% of the weighted caseload guidelines in FY22. And the weighted caseload guidelines assume a maximum of 128 felonies, 226 misdemeanors, or 31 appeals, or some combination thereof, that an attorney can do in a single year. However, there were a fair amount of attorneys that were above those guidelines, about 17% of attorneys who took appointed cases. This is up considerably from the COVID years and a little bit above what we had in 2019 before COVID. As to excessive caseloads, there were 6 attorneys that had more than 5 times the weighted caseload guideline. And where we really saw a change was those attorneys that were more than 3 times the weighted caseload guidelines. We had 61. I have in some following pages a listing of which attorneys were more than 4 times the weighted caseload guidelines in FY21 and FY22. I used to list all of them, all of the attorneys that were more than 3 times the guidelines, but there were so many, it wasn't a graphically feasible option to do. And so what we've seen is it looks like based on FY22 numbers that there are more attorneys that have higher caseloads. When we list those caseloads, that does not talk about non-appointed case time. And so for that, attorneys are supposed to report to us the % of their practice time devoted to indigent defense in each county. Every year we struggle to get them to report. Last year we had our best ever reporting ever, and we had 78% of attorneys enter their reports. So far, we're at 61%. We're hoping to get that a little bit higher. Overall, the median % of time devoted to indigent defense cases by attorneys is 70% of their practice time. So it's very significant. If we could just continue on to page 80 and 81, there's a listing of the caseloads that I've mentioned. In past years, those attorneys with high caseloads were almost all public defenders, but this year we had a fair amount of private attorneys, and some of these private attorneys had other practice besides appointed cases, and that's a little bit concerning. The highlighted attorneys on these pages are attorneys who are listed on both the FY22 list and the FY21 list.
Question, I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Excuse me, you're telling me that this person got paid $1 million?
Yes.
That's the next page.
Yes. That's always.
I'm sorry, I went to the dollar signs. Okay, wait a minute. They took, so it's 399 cases and felonies, and you see where I'm talking about, right? At the bottom, Jeannie. Okay, 207, and this is in 1 year. do we know if they if they were pled out? How were the cases resolved? Or what is the judicial word, disposed? What's the judicial word, the judge's disposition? Okay, what was the disposition on these,
Chair, we don't have that information. This is just summary totals from the auditors. Mr. Bunnan may be able to speak more about it, though.
But do the math per case.
Anecdotally, I can tell you those, few of those went to trial, if any.
okay, okay, hang on.
They're
Make
doing
sure I understand.
volume business.
Okay, so, okay, now I'm getting to I don't like doing this because you're saying these are indigent individuals that qualify for court
These are
appointed
lawyers.
for the indigents.
Yes.
And that's why you're like,
Yes,
okay, I hear what you're
correct.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
you
now
got
I'm
it.
getting with you. Okay, all right. So they also have other cases as well, like that are not part of this system?
They give you practice.
Some do, some don't.
Yeah, they give you practice percentages over in that last. column.
But if you're taking 500, 600 cases a year, this is one, you're not talking about biennium.
Right.
If I'm taking that many a year, can you say you can't take any other cases? I mean, if I made $1 million,
We haven't made any
can't
statements about
say.
that. It does
You
seem like
can't?
it's hard.
The
well,
ju-
is this person have an associate?
Remember who's making these appointments. Well, they may.
Can you give it to your associate?
They're still the lawyer on the case. They're still.
Oh, but is that how this works though?
They could. And I'm just wondering, does OLS play into this at all?
Not the judge. And
What is
it's-
OLS?
Operation Lone Star.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that, okay, so, okay, so what you're telling me is that I'm so sorry, I'm just trying to grasp
It's
this.
hard to imagine.
I can be on the wheel and there's no intent for me personally, I'm gonna have all my associates.
We don't know.
Is that permissible?
Chair Collier, under the rules, if the auditor is to accurately report, they're supposed to break out the attorney. So if you have a law firm, it's not just a law firm that's supposed to be reported, it's every attorney that's on the case.
So if it's Collier and Ortiz, and we have 6 associates. Ortiz got all of this, it wasn't her associates.
If the reporting is correct, that's correct.
Do we ask for that though?
Well.
In
yes,
practice, what I've seen in practice is sometimes the attorneys help each other out and they'll make appearances, like a lot of them are docket calls. And I don't know how they're paid in your counties, but in our county, they're paid per docket. So it could very well be that they've got other attorneys working with them or helping them. But there's no way we can know that unless they ask to get paid separately, but the attorneys generally work that stuff out amongst themselves. They do each other favors. But this is way too much money to be that. It's just way too much money.
Well, to me, it seems like they have an associate, somebody, I mean, I don't even know if that's possible to take that many cases and have a, quality. Not
Well,
trying to
what-
judge
I
this
think
person, I don't know who they are,
What
but
you're saying, I know what you're saying, and that's what I would suspect, that it's a plea mill.
Yeah.
so can we get data on how the
Well,
cases were disposed?
yeah, we could certainly pick
You have-
somebody and look them up on Harris
Look
County.
at the $1 million person.
Yeah, it's very possible.
I don't know how you get that data, because you have OCA reports, but it's not by attorney, is it?
Well, the county, our county.
Oh, you're right,
We'd have
because
to
you
go
pay
through
the
the
checks. Yeah,
clerk's
you write the
office.
checks. Yeah.
Well,
would be
even-
interesting.
we call it JWeb. It's an internal system of case management that we can figure out.
And they use a wheel? How does she get on the wheel so
Yeah,
much?
she'd be on the wheel.
But how's she get chosen so many times?
They
Well,
don't always follow the deal. And that was the problem we had. So we had to make them change their plan so that we got an equitable amount of appointments, because some judges favor some lawyers.
Well, they should
Is there a
always.
separate bilingual wheel?
Oh.
It's not it's a notation on the wheel.
Okay.
So
So
yes,
now
they're
there's
very
not-
much in demand. If you're a Spanish speaking lawyer in Harris County, you're gonna make a lot of money. But that doesn't take away the duty from the judge to make sure that they're not over appointing people. Yeah.
And why are the people highlighted? I forgot, what did you say?
Those are on both lists, Chair.
It's 2 years. They're
2 years
over
in a
the
row.
top. So it's Dallas PDs and Harris County private lawyers are leading in overpayment and overload of paper.
You're doing great.
Well, we have,
We are.
you gave us,
Yeah.
when we were created, you gave us maximums. We don't go over those.
And do they not have on that you should be number one?
It
Unless you
is,
have a
it is, and
conflict?
in fact, what we did for the felony courses, we've created an algorithm every day where we get a number of cases from each of the 20, what do we have 23 or 24, 23 district courts every day. Which we, if we're overloaded, we can turn down, but we automatically get them from all the courts, whereas 3 years ago, there were some courts that gave us virtually nothing and some courts that gave us all their cases.
That should not even be an
So,
option.
yeah.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's.
Do we know which judges are doing it? Like, is it one judge that's doing the same? Or are they getting it from all the judges? Like, is this person, I don't know, one of them that's,
It's very easy to look at which courts they're favored in. But yeah, they're gonna be favored in some courts.
One thing I'd add, just looking at the Dallas numbers, we see that several Dallas public defenders show up on there. This board did give a grant to Dallas Public Defender to reduce their caseloads. So even though they're there right now, we anticipate in future years, they won't be on there thanks to this board, that we're making some progress there.
well, I guess I can't be too up. So if they're a public defender, this one public defender had 1,687 cases.
But they get paid the same whether they take that many cases or not, but therein lies the difference.
But I guess it's feasible to take that many cases.
Well, I don't think it is.
I know it's not, but I'm just saying, it's not, but we don't have standards, remember? We don't have those
Standards for that. We do have standards for
We
that.
do? Like, you can't take
Yes.
16, how many cases what do we say?
Their guidelines.
We have guidelines.
Oh, what are the
Yeah.
guidelines then? How many?
But if you receive money from us, the guidelines are standards.
Well, this is a public defender.
It predates TIDC. Yeah, they're not, they're.
Okay,
they're
so this,
different.
they
They're
don't
not
have,
funded by us.
they're not? She's not funded, they're not, the Harris, Dallas County.
So Chair, Dallas County is what there are 5 counties that we've got about roughly 70 counties today with a public defender office in them. But 5 of those predate TIDC. Most of them are TIDC, but 5 of those, including Dallas, predate TIDC. And their misdemeanor attorneys, for example, get 100 cases every month, 100 new misdemeanors every month. But this board back in June voted to help out Dallas County with that. That basically would cut that in half. So instead of 1,200 cases per year per attorney, it would bring it down to 600 cases per year per attorney, basically by increasing the number of staff. Our guidelines say that, and our guidelines are roughly in line with the ones nationally and every other state that's done a study here, say that it really should be in the ballpark of 240 misdemeanors a year. So right now, Dallas County, for instance, is about 5 times that. But with the work that this board has done, it's actually going to bring them down to about 2.5 times that instead of 5 times that. So we're helping them out quite a bit.
And we don't know if these are pleas or how they
can,
Yeah,
it's
just
a
based
reasonable
on-
assumption.
Based on.
Just look at the
averages,
that
95% of every place.
That's right.
I think we need to look into this a little bit more.
I think we say that every year, don't we?
We do have the caseload guidelines. Yeah, because I mean, I just think 200 odd just can't be reasonable.
I feel like under some circumstances, that's really not very many cases.
No.
At all.
What is it?
200.
It's not allowed
For a year.
for a whole year.
For-
Well, I mean, I think that you're assuming that they're going to actually do more than plead them out.
Well, in many cases, they do plead out and it's the defendant's choice. Because
I
they
mean,
don't,
yeah, if I had a choice between getting out of jail today.
that's right. Or deferred, or, there's some sweet deals that can be offered and that are offered, especially if the attorney has a good relationship with the prosecutor. So I
But
don't.
we
feel
all
like
agree
that's too-
1,600, because I mean,
I that's kind of shocking. I don't know.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
Sir.
One of the variables may be that nowadays what we get are defendants that have multiple cases. So I don't know if they're talking about a case or
that's the
client.
point.
Because
That's
that's
a good point.
very, nowadays,
just
the
count
norm is
separate.
that they have more than one
Each is
case.
counted
So-
separately.
Correct.
Yeah, each
So
case
that-
is counted. Yeah, so you might have a felony and a couple of misdemeanors. And each case is counted separately, and that would reduce the number because a lot of times they're working the deal for all 3 cases.
Okay,
That's the norm nowadays.
It is.
but I get paid for all 3? I mean,
Oh,
each
yes.
individually, I
Yes,
get
you
paid.
do.
So if I get 5 charges, my one court appointed attorney is getting paid for 5 different charges.
Correct.
Okay.
it might not be the same amount. I've seen fee schedules where they have a reduced, like they might have this amount for, you know, the felony, but if you have an accompanying case, then you're paid substantially less, but you're still paid.
So but the first process is to look at the public defender's office first. So Harris County has a public defender's office. They always look at the public defender's office first.
They should.
Yeah, but I mean.
Do they or they
we
should?
couldn't take every case.
I understand.
first. So what we've done is come to an agreement with the district courts to create this algorithm that we get a certain number of cases every day from each felony district court. So that puts them out of the business of calling. I mean, if we did the wheel, they just call us, and if we got overloaded, we just have to say, no, we can't take that. This gives us and them some anticipation of what can be handled and what can be done. Otherwise, it all just bogs down. You got all these coordinators calling us and going, can you come down here? And we're like, no, we've already gotten all our cases for today. So technically, yes, we're the first priority. It's in the plan, but we worked out a way that everyone is happy with that.
And that works.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
But there are places where they're not treated as the priority. I agree with that.
That's why the statute was passed that said they should be given priority. It was Hidalgo County.
Oh,
Okay.
he didn't.
Okay, so we got one more.
Oh, you wanted to say.
Well, yeah, as fast as we can. And just briefly, that we list the dollar amounts on page 82 and 83. I don't know if you have any comments, but we rarely.
We heard the
I think we've done them already.
We rarely have in the past had attorneys that had over 500,000 a year, and now we're seeing more of it. And that $1 million attorney is effective.
Yeah.
And just as a note on the Dallas grant that was mentioned, as part of our technical assistance and implementation, we asked for caseloads. And they will be tracking caseloads and outcomes. So if that is something that the board's interested in, we could report on that.
You're gonna track it, but you're not gonna set or make requirements or guidance, no guidelines on it. Because like, if you're giving new dollars now, they weren't a part of your original program, but you have a program.
Grants, yes, you can make it a grant condition, which is what they've done.
Yeah.
With all of.
It is a grant, is it a grant condition now?
Yes.
With that money,
So
money?
what we've said is we're giving you these additional dollars. You can't take more cases. You need to use this money to add additional staff
Okay,
to handle the same number of cases
Good.
coming in. That's how we've created the guidance and the grant.
and that's why we should see a reduction.
Right.
Okay.
I think we should look at it.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see that.
Absolutely.
So continuing to page 84, there's a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since the August meeting, we've issued 2 policy monitoring reports. We've received responses from 7 counties responding to the findings in our reports, and we have 1 county in which the response is going to be due next week. We have several reports in the hopper that we haven't quite issued. Now, where we do have a motion is on page 86. It's with Maverick and Zavala counties. We've had long-standing monitoring reviews in both counties going back to 2008. Most of our original findings that we made back then are still outstanding. And so in August, the Policies and Standards Committee passed a motion allowing us to ask for some supplemental data. And this would be data showing the number of requests for counsel and the number of appointments and denials of indigence. And the reporting was supposed to be on a monthly basis. We asked for this data in beginning for the month of October. And unfortunately, we did not get full reporting from the counties. In Maverick County, the 293rd District Court reported data to us, but that court has not received requests for counsel from the magistration that goes to the other district court, and the county court didn't report to us regarding misdemeanors. In Zavala County, that the 293rd reported to us as they did in Maverick County, and the Zavala County Court was reported to us, but we didn't get anything regarding the court that handles felony requests that made at magistration. And so we're kind of at a little bit of a quandary here is how can we go forward and make sure that the findings that we found since 2008 are addressed if we can't get data reported to us. We have a staff recommendation to impose a grant condition that we will withhold formula grants until each county is current with reporting. I don't know if you want to go forward with this. We tried to work with the counties, and Judge Keller has had some additional ideas as to maybe help spur them to get data to us. But right now we're in a bad spot.
Well, I know this is running really long, so let me just jump in right here if I may. And maybe Judge Maderi can tell us, but I thought maybe we should notify the regional presiding judge before we take this next step into Sid Harrell and see if he can find out what's going on and help these counties report. Do you think that would even be worth our time though, Judge Maderi?
Yeah, I do. Sid Harrell is wonderful, and I think he would, be happy to help in any way. And I think that would be a great thing for you guys to do.
Okay, because I hate to take away the little bit of money they're getting, because I think in the long run, that just hurts the defendants. What do y'all think about asking staff to do that? And just not, or do you all think it's time to go ahead and pull the trigger on this?
I say pull the trigger, because if they've been asking, I mean, what is the excuse? Why? It says the judge responded. What was the response?
Well, one judge responded.
What was the
and some
response?
didn't. So the whole county's gonna be penalized.
I know, but what did the judge say?
He gave us the report that we asked for.
It says the Zavala County judge responded.
Yeah, he did what he was supposed to.
Oh, so he followed through. Maverick County didn't.
Well, not everybody in Zavala did, right?
Yeah, it's the same court that didn't respond in Maverick County, the 365th.
Okay.
Oh, but then why even have reporting if y'all don't have to comply? I mean, there's got to be consequences.
Who does the actual reporting? Is that the auditors?
For this judge, we asked each individual court.
You asked
because
the
it's
judge
just
himself?
appointments as they come in instead of auditor data as the case is disposed.
Because I know the district judge appoints the auditor.
Well,
So if the auditor's doing it and the district judge doesn't know about it, then we should tell the district judge.
I think that should be a first step. One of these counties makes about 13,000 a year, the other about 14,000. So it's not a lot of money for them to be incentivized.
But we have to be
Do the
fiscally
report.
responsible. We have to be responsible.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But what we want in the long run is for them to get the money and spend it on indigent defense. So if we can take one step in the meantime,
But we don't know if they're doing that because they didn't report.
what we do, we know what they're spending. What we don't know is what are we not getting?
Well, what we got from Zavala County was they received 25 misdemeanor magistrate warnings, one request for counsel according to the county judge and one appointment. But the JP's reported a few more requests for counsel, but so there may be a breakdown in getting all the requests to him.
Yeah.
In Maverick County, we don't really know what's happening, except that in the 293rd District Court that they're taking in court requests for counsel and are ruling on that.
We know what they're spending. What we don't know is what procedures they're using to appoint counsel and make sure that people know that they're entitled to counsel.
But we are responsible for getting that information because we have to report to the feds that we're upholding. I mean,
We don't have report,
are
but
we on the hook for not having good data?
no, but I agree. I think there's a lot to what you say about we need to be responsible for the money that this organization is spending. I'm not sure that either of these counties is going to do what we want in order to get their $13,000.
Oh,
And I don't want them to drop out of the system and not have the money. to
okay,
spend.
fair.
I think Judge Keller, I'm sorry, Judge Keller, I think that, a call from the PJ usually gets some type of response. And I think you're right. What we want them to do is not drop out. We want them to comply and we want to be fiscally, responsible for what we spend. But I think if the staff reaches out to Judge Harrell, I've had issues in the 4th region before, and I've had to reach out to Judge Harrell. A phone call from a PJ usually gets someone's attention. So I think if staff reached out, and Sid Harrell is just wonderful, and I think he could really help us.
And then if it doesn't work, we'll be meeting again in 3 months.
And I'm gonna reach out to their state rep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so no action on 16 complaint.
I'll be really quick. So we had 17 new complaints this quarter, which is on track with what we normally do. One of them remains open that I'll talk about in a minute. 3 of them were forwarded to local officials to take care of. And 8 complainants were sent self-referral letters, referring them to other places that could better help them. Most common complaint was attorneys failing to communicate with their clients
or keep them updated on their cases. And then as for the notable complaints, one of them came from the Dallas County Public Defender Office from the Capital Division, saying that they weren't receiving priority in appointments. And the policy team is still looking into that complaint and investigating it. And then the second notable complaint is from a defense attorney, and it alleges that Gregg County does not timely appoint counsel for out-of-county defendants. And so we forwarded that to the local administrative district judge in Gregg County, and he reminded the appointing authority that the timeline is the same for both out-of-county and in-county requests.
And I want to say, like I said yesterday, I think this program is finally working the way we want it to. We're not overwhelmed with complaints. And the ones that we can do something about, we look into, but otherwise we refer. So I think it's running really well. Thank you. Yes.
It's all for policy and standards.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bannon. Next meeting? March, sometime in March.
Yeah, we'll set out a calendar, like a doodle poll to everyone.
Okay, any new business? Well, thank you all for a really fantastic meeting with a lot of good discussion, and thank you staff for all the work you do. I mean, even, there was something I was looking at. It looks easy when it comes to us because you all put so much work into it. The motions, even just the motion, somebody has to do a lot of work on those. We really appreciate it. So Jeff, we hope you feel better.
Thank you. I
And,
appreciate it.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.